please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could take a moment of silence for the Francis family, please. Thank you. Please do.
Nothing to close or seal.
Nope.
So we wait for it.
Right to disclosure.
Ready for disclosure?
Yep.
Okay. How to start?
She's just checking in. I think that's the Ethics Commission.
No, she has all the information.
Yeah, she knows.
All right, so during executive session, we took a vote on, to approve the executive session minutes of 6/18/24. There were 8 in favor and 2 abstained, with Chambers and Champlin abstaining, and Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Phelps, Pouliot, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor. CTC appeal minutes, there were 8 in favor and 2 abstained, with Chambers and Champlin abstaining, with Hopkins, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Phelps, Pouliot, Purcell, and Reynolds in favor. And then return to open session, 10 in favor, with Chambers, Champlin, Colasante, Giusti, Hopkins, Luzon, Lyle, Lyle's not here, Phelps, Pouliot, Purcell, and Reynolds, all in favor.
Thank you.
Okay, so recognition this evening, please join me in congratulating and thanking the following. Our high school senior Kaya Elwell, 2024 recipient of the Providence Journal Courage Award. Next is high school junior William Ellis, one of 62 students from across Rhode Island, earned the Herbert and Claiborne Pell Medal for U.S. History. This award recognizes college and high school students in the state who have excelled in United States history. We'd also like to recognize our Skills USA national champions, Erin Van Housen, silver medal in architectural drafting, Ella Murphy, 8th place in baking and pastry arts, and Tori Babineau, Emerson Flynn, and Mia McNeese, 8th place in the crime scene investigation. We would like to thank Charlestown School Committee Representative Andrew McQuaid for his service for the Charahoe School District. And it is with mixture of gratitude and sadness that we announce the departure of Ned Draper, our Director of Administration and Finance. Over the past 4 years, Ned has been an invaluable part of our district, contributing his skills, dedication, and positive spirit to every project and task. Ned's contributions have greatly impacted our success, and he will be missed by all of us. We wish him all the best in his future endeavors. Please join me in thanking Ned for his outstanding work and dedication to the Charahoe community.
Okay, public forum. Louise, you're first.
Good evening, Louise Dinsmore from Richmond. Ned, I wish you the best. A big loss to the district. Your skills, your demeanor, you're an exceptional human being. And I just want to thank you for always being willing to answer questions, the many that I've had over the years. So thank you very much for your service. You're welcome. I'm Louise Dinsmore from Richmond. I'm the president of the Forgotten Taxpayers and a candidate for Charahoe School Committee. I have a point that I'd like to make tonight and then followed up by a question for Superintendent Picard. This past weekend, the world witnessed a failed assassination attempt of a former United States president. Donald Trump's life was spared and he evaded a fatal bullet to the head. I'd like to call attention to the verbal bullet that was hurled at last month's school committee meeting by Richmond resident Christopher Kona. Mr. Kona, who neglected to reference that he serves as the chair of the Richmond Democrat Town Committee, took a verbal shot at Moms for Liberty. At the June 18th school committee meeting, Mr. Kona said, and I quote, "I wanted to speak about the rising threat from Moms for Liberty in Rhode Island. These people have been coming to school committee meetings espousing fear. They are trying to bully town members and school committee members. They are going to be vile in their discussions. They are going to try to scare you." He goes on to say that, quote, "One of the goals of Moms for Liberty is to undermine the effectiveness of our public schools." Let me set the record straight for Mr. Kona and for our community. I signed the Moms for Liberty Parent Pledge for candidates and elected officials. I was proud to sign it, and I am unapologetic about it. And here's what that pledge states. I pledge to honor the fundamental rights of parents, including, but not limited to, the right to direct education, medical care, and moral upbringing of their children. I pledge to advance policies that strengthen parental involvement and decision-making, increase transparency, defend against government overreach, and secure parental rights at all levels of government. There is nothing vile in that pledge. There is nothing undermining the effectiveness of public education in that pledge. That pledge is reasonable. So to Mr. Kona, the chair of the Richmond Democrat Town Committee, please stop hurling your verbal bullets my way. There is something that Mr. Kona and I agree on, and that is bullying is never acceptable. To that end, I'd like to point out that a board member of the Friends of Charahoe approached me aggressively in a school parking lot last month. She was unhinged, pointing her finger in my face, acting erratically. I reported the incident to the Richmond police. This is the same woman who called me evil and posted that all over social media. She also posted personal things about my son, and that is not acceptable. So to Mr. Kona, instead of hurling verbal bullets at mothers who demand to have a say in what their children are learning in school, as they should as parents, why don't you spend your time calling out your surrogates who take it upon themselves to bully candidates like me who represent a different point of view? Let me repeat, I represent a different point of view from time to time. I regularly ask questions about spending. I'm an independent, critical thinker. It's perfectly fair for others to challenge my ideas. But character assassination must stop. I would expect Mr. Kona to challenge ideas, not attack moms. Mr. Kona, the verbal bullets need to stop. You're better than that. You're better than that. Moving on, I'd like to ask the superintendent about the status of the flooding problem at Richmond Elementary School. If you'll remember, last month I asked Superintendent Picard about the plan to mitigate the flooding issue at the school and was hoping perhaps Superintendent Picard, you could outline any steps that have been taken to ensure that students and staff aren't impacted by this flooding issue in the future. Is that any update that you can give?
Well, I can't guarantee it's not going to happen in the future.
Okay.
We're doing the best that we can with the facilities that are 90 plus years old, which is why I recommended new structures, new facilities. You can't just lift up the building and fix the grounding and the leveling of that, or the grading that needs to be done. So we have widened drained, we have added pumps, we have fixed and pointed bricks. We continue to mitigate the needs as necessary. In the last few rainstorms, we've had a few. We haven't had flooding, so that's a good sign, but I can't guarantee that we won't see it again. But so far, since the last time we widened the drains and added more pumps in the bags, we have not seen any other problems to date.
Thank you.
I would add, when we get over 2 inches an hour or over saturation, like when we have a really heavy spring rainfall and then we get 1 inch an hour, 2 inches an hour, that's when we start to see
The
these
water
issues.
tables become very high and then
Yeah.
create the problem.
Okay, thank you so much.
Chris Kona from Richmond.
Hi, thank you. I'm Chris Kona from Richmond. I wanted to at least start with a quick reminder that the school committee is limited in the extent to which they can answer questions when presented those in public forum. And so as folks come to public forum, to keep that in mind, that if they would like to have a discussion with the committee about some of their policies, that they should, I recommend they add that to the agenda. I'll end my statement in defense to Luis's comments. So I did speak out at the last school board meeting about Moms for Liberty. having heard Bob's response, I don't feel bad at all about anything that I said, and feel like the statements that I made were validated in the statements issued by Bob on behalf of Monster Liberty at the school district with regard to the way that they deal with transgender and gender nonconforming students. As a student of 2 kids at Chero School, which is my principal representation from this, as well as from the perspective, as Louise Dinsmore said, I am the chair of the local Richmond Democrats, and therefore I do want to make sure that we are representing folks who also have children in the Chero schools, for which this is a concern. Those statements made by Bob last month at the school board meeting represent a threat against my students who are at the school and the way that they're educated. Chero so far has been doing a phenomenal job of educating gender nonconforming students, including my students. And their success in Chero is a testament to Chero's success in this area. And so I would encourage the Chero School District and the Chero School Committee to continue to maintain your policies in these areas to support students like mine who are in there. If Louise is concerned about the way that her children are educated, she may want to bring that up with the administrative boards for the schools that her children attend, as opposed to the Chero School Committee. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of public forum. On to business.
Okay, next we have the Rhode Island Ethics Commission presentation. This staff attorney, Lynn, is it Radishes? Radishes, thank you, Lynn. Lynn Radishes will provide an introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission and the Rhode Island Code of Ethics. I do suggest that everyone participate in the presentation and ask questions as necessary.
I prepared for the stream. I didn't know I was also projecting it.
Who has if you send me the link, I can put it up. Yeah, I can. Oh, it is. Oh, the slide deck or the.
Yes.
Oh, it is.
Craig, it's on the
Gina.
website too.
Gina, can you remind everybody why we're having a presentation?
You are required to participate in this presentation every year, and it's ordered by the.
Couple years,
Yeah.
because of a lawsuit that we had against us that we won, but it was mandated that we and the other parties participate in an ethics presentation every couple years.
Which I've been at every time, but
Yes.
the other parties never showed up once.
No, you're right.
They're no, yeah, those are no longer members. Like,
No, but this is due to a lawsuit.
I didn't realize that. I will say that people that are elected and appointed officials, both state and municipal employees, and members of public boards, commissions, and agencies are all subject to the Code of Ethics. And it's really a good idea to be familiar with one's responsibilities under the code. In Rhode Island, ethics training is not mandatory at this point, so I just travel around town to town trying to deliver this training to anyone who will have me, and I'm very grateful to be here this evening, not just because I don't have central air at home, but it's lovely in here. So it would be ideal to use the PowerPoint.
yep, it's coming. And just
Oh, terrific.
it's searching for the library.
I've done it without it, but might not be as much fun for everyone here. So how will I be able to advance the slides?
You can just let me know and I say next slide.
Oh, okay, that's gonna bug you, but it's okay. All right.
Lynn, we have done this every 2 years, even before a suit was brought.
Yes, and I've been to Richmond recently, so it's great.
Oh, yeah. It stopped circling. Here it is. What's the number?
I will start by saying that this is indeed an introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission and the Rhode Island Code of Ethics. This is going to be big picture stuff. Okay, there's no test at the end. No one has to memorize anything. There's nothing that will be presented tonight that can't be accessed at a later date, whether it's asking for a copy of the PowerPoint or looking at the Code of Ethics on our website. We have hard copies. If anyone ever wanted one, you could call my office and I would send it out to you. You could call someone at my office or me there and ask a question. It's, again, big picture stuff. If you leave here tonight knowing there is an Ethics Commission, when you might need us, how to get a hold of us, that's in my win column. I hope you put it in your win column too. I do answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions. Generally speaking, I ask the favor that people hold their questions until the end, and I'll tell you why. 97% of the time, the question that you're going to ask, it's the next slide, I promise. And if it's not, it's coming up. And if I switch gears, it's a little tough to stay, and I try and move through this thing in like 45 minutes or so. That having been said, if you simply can't go on until your question is answered, raise your hand. I'm happy to answer a question, okay? So I think I've just gone through the first slide anyway, so we'll be able to move that along.
No, is it on?
No, it's showing the,
Again. What is it? I already put in the first code. Six, oh, oops.
I have a thumb drive if that helps. That looks familiar. So it would be slideshow from beginning.
Just
Okay.
twisting my neck.
You can advance that one. That's the one, that was my little spiel. Okay. All right, everyone. You know what? I'd like to move around. I don't really hear a difference. Do I need a microphone?
Yes, because of the YouTube, sorry.
Oh, I forgot about the YouTubers. Okay, at the microphone I shall stand. Take a look at Article 3, Section 7 of our state constitution, which reads, "The people of the state of Rhode Island believe that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust, and the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety," we'll talk more about that, "and not use their position for private gain or advantage." That is what our state constitution asks of us. Next slide, please. So before we get into the actual Rhode Island Code of Ethics and the Ethics Commission, I'd like to just kind of orient us all by talking a little bit about ethical conduct in general. Ethics is a standard or philosophy of right and wrong human behavior based on logical reasoning. So ethical conduct is the type of behavior that a logical person would agree is just the right thing to do under the circumstances, right? Well, maybe, maybe not. Because here's the thing, people have different ideas about what makes behavior right or wrong, right? What might be right to one might be wrong to another. Next slide, please. We have something called ethics based on culture. Maybe you've heard the expression, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Many people think that whether something is ethical depends on the setting in which it occurs, taking into account the local culture, habits, customs. Hey, this is the way we've always done things in our town. It must be ethical, right? Maybe, maybe not. Ethics based on culture is not the standard by which ethical behavior is measured at the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. Next slide, please. So how about ethics based on consequences? That's where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by looking at the outcome. Ethical conduct is behavior that produces more positive results than negative results in both quantity and quality. Maybe you've heard, well, the end justifies the means here. All's well that ends well. As long as we have the right outcome, doesn't matter how we got here. Not so. Not per the Ethics Commission. Next slide, please. Well, how about ethics based on character? That's where ethical conduct is determined by asking, what would a virtuous person do under these very circumstances? The focus there is on one's character. one's motive. Hey, I'm a decent, upstanding person. How could I possibly violate something called the Code of Ethics? Even character is not the standard by which ethical behavior is measured at the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. Next slide. So we ask you to please focus on your result. Focus on your action, not the result. The Code of Ethics tells us what actions to avoid without regard to culture, without regard to consequence, even without regard to character. Ethical or unethical conduct is determined not by looking at the results, but by looking at the conduct itself and judging its inherent rightness or wrongness. Focus on your action, not the result. Next slide, please. A little bit about the Ethics Commission before we get into the Code of Ethics. There are 9 members of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. Right now we have 8. We anxiously await the appointment of a 9th and final member because it's always better to have a full complement of people at the table. The governor appoints all members of the Ethics Commission. Now, the governor selects 4 commissioners of his or her own choosing, and then the governor also appoints the other 5 members of the Ethics Commission, but does so from lists of names that have been submitted by leaders from both our House and Senate, the State House and the State Senate. The Ethics Commission is a very powerful commission. It has advisory powers, investigative powers, adjudicative powers, and in some instances, removal powers. And this is interesting that members of the Ethics Commission may not hold or campaign for public office. They may not hold office in any political party or in any political committee, nor may they participate in or even contribute to a political campaign. Not so much as a sign on the front lawn of an ethics commissioner at election time. Next slide, please. So I am a member of the staff of the Ethics Commission. We work for the 9 ethics commissioners. And our executive director and chief prosecutor is a gentleman named Jason Grammett. And prior to becoming executive director and chief prosecutor in April of 2018, Jason held my job for, I think, more than 20 years. This guy knows the code and its contents up one side and down the other. So Jason and I are 2 of 5 attorneys at the Ethics Commission. We have 3 investigators, all former police officers, all know their way around an investigation. We have an incredible support staff. Michelle Berg is a name you might want to remember. She is our financial disclosure officer. And if you have a question about financial disclosure and Michelle can't answer it, no one can. There are 12 of us at the Ethics Commission, and we spend our days at 40 Fountain Street in the city of Providence. There will be a slide at the end with our contact information. Next slide, please. So who's subject to this code? Well, I mentioned it earlier. All state and municipal elected officials subject to the code. All state and municipal appointed officials and employees of state and municipal government and members of public boards, commissions, and agencies. There are a lot of people subject to the Code of Ethics in this state. Next slide, please. Conflicts of interest and recusal. Conflicts of interest and nepotism are pretty much the bread and butter of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. There are other parts of the code that are super important as well and that we will cover, but I like to start with conflicts of interest because it's such a big piece of the code and so important. Next slide, please. So, as a person subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not participate in any matter if it is reasonably foreseeable. What do I mean by reasonably foreseeable? Reasonably foreseeable means that something is more than conceivable and less than certain to occur. That's a lot of airspace, right? So it has to be reasonably foreseeable that you, any person in your family, your business associate, or any business by which you are employed or which you represent, if they will derive a direct monetary gain or suffer a direct monetary loss by reason of your participation, you've got a conflict of interest you must recuse. Now, I've had people say to me, I get the financial gain part, but if I take part in this particular vote, I'm going to lose money. So that shouldn't be a conflict of interest. I shouldn't have to recuse. I can take part as long as I'm not going to have financial gain, right? Wrong. The Code of Ethics makes no distinction between financial gain and financial loss. The concern is that you, as someone subject to the Code of Ethics, not take part in a matter. And that doesn't just mean voting, that's the discussions leading up to the voting and the voting. If your participation will result in a direct financial impact to you, to someone in your family, to your business associate, to your private employer. Next slide, please. So, who do I mean by business associates? It's important to know that. By definition, under the Code of Ethics, our business associates are persons or entities with whom we are joined to achieve a common financial objective. That is not the most helpful definition I've ever read. Let's look at some examples. Your business partners are your business associates. That's fairly obvious. People you have hired are your business associates. Think attorney, accountant, realtor, contractor. You get the idea. The Ethics Commission has determined that the landlord-tenant relationship is one of business associates, and this next one is really important and often forgotten. You ready? Any businesses or organizations, now this includes not-for-profits, okay? If you are an officer or you serve on the board of directors for that private organization, regardless of whether you get paid to do so, you are a business associate, not only of the private organization, but of the other officers or members of boards of the board of directors. Okay, next slide, please. So, ongoing business relationships do not necessarily remain ongoing forever, right? People come and go in our lives. So I'd like you to know what the Ethics Commission looks at when they're trying to determine whether or not there's a business associate relationship between two parties. They'll ask 3 questions. Are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions between one another? Are there outstanding accounts between the parties? Let's say the work has been finished, but somebody still owes the other money. Is there an anticipated future relationship between these parties? You don't need yes to all 3. If the answer is yes to any one of these, that's going to indicate that there's a business associate relationship. Now, a few minutes ago, I used realtor as an example. Your realtor is your business associate. Let's say that you sold your home in 2019 and you used a realtor and hopefully got more than you were asking for your home. You had the closing, all the funds have been distributed. You've been living happily ever after in your new home for 5 years with no plans to use that or any other realtor anytime soon. And that realtor comes before you in your public capacity in the town, barring some other relationship under the code, like it's not your brother-in-law or your niece, probably not your business associate anymore, right? But if your house is for sale now and you used a realtor, and let's say you accepted an offer and the closing's in 3 weeks, and that realtor comes before you in your public capacity, stop. You have a conflict of interest because that's your business associate. You must recuse from participation. Next slide, please. So the code also talks about our family members. Who does the code consider our family members? Well, here's the deal on that. Whether by blood, marriage, or adoption, here's your list of family members: spouse, parents, children, siblings, grandparents and grandchildren, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and your first cousins. Those are all your family members. When the code says you may not take an official action that will directly financially impact your family member, that's who they mean. So someone might say, Lynn, I haven't spoken to my sister in 6 years. If she comes before me in my public capacity, I would no more go out of my way to help her than I would to hurt her. I'll treat her like I would anybody else. No conflict. I don't need to recuse, right? Nope, not right. A family member is a family member is a family member, regardless of the status of your relationship at any given time. So let's say that the same person says, Lynn, I'm a lot closer to my best friend than I ever was to my sister. If my best friend comes before me in my public capacity with the town, do I need to recuse? Tell you what, technically, under the code, you do not. I mean, can you imagine the Ethics Commission trying to assign some sort of a value to your friendship with someone? I mean, what would they ask? Did you meet in kindergarten? Did you date in high school? Do you take each other's kids back and forth to practices or rehearsals? Do you text twice a minute, twice a decade? It's impossible. But remember that constitutionally founded goal, asking us to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. The Code of Ethics asks us to do the same. So if your best friend comes before you in your public capacity, it's an excellent opportunity for you to just exercise the discretion to say, you know what? This is my best friend, and this looks bad. And even though I don't have to recuse, I don't need to take part in this. I'm going to recuse and let someone else handle it. Okay, sermon over. Next slide. Think of a conflict of interest as a situation where a person's public duties and private life intersect. Okay, and I did say no test, and that's still true, and you don't have to memorize anything. But if you leave here tonight with anything on your mind, please make it the next thing I'm going to say. You ready? It is not unethical to have a conflict of interest. It doesn't violate the code of ethics to have a conflict of interest, said the woman from West Warwick with 31 first cousins. I kid you not. That's before marriage. It's not the conflict that's the problem. The potential problem is the failure to identify and manage your conflict, and we help people do that all the time. Next slide, please. So, do I have a conflict of interest? Here's what you're going to ask yourself. Is it reasonably foreseeable, more than conceivable, less than certain to occur, that a decision that I'm helping to make as part of my public duties will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, to my family or household member, to my business associate, to a business by which I'm employed? Next slide, please. Ask yourself, oh, we can go back one. Thanks. Do I have a conflict of interest? I'm sorry, next slide. I just updated these slides and I don't recognize them all yet. The other ones I know like the back of my hand. Okay, ask yourself, even if there is no financial impact, is a family member, household member, business associate, or a business by which I'm employed a party to or taking part in the matter that's being discussed? If the answer is yes, you have a conflict of interest. You must recuse from any participation in the matter. Now, in this slide, in the last slide, you see the term household member up there. Under the nepotism provisions of the Code of Ethics, which we're going to look at momentarily, if someone lives under your roof, that is conflict of interest territory, regardless of whether you are related by blood, marriage, or adoption. That's as pertains to the nepotism provisions. Next slide, please. So the act of recusal is a relatively simple one. We ask you to please complete a statement of conflict of interest form, sometimes called a recusal form. If they're not in the building or with your clerk, you can download one from our website, or we can send you one. I'm sure that most clerks have them in the office. You fill it out. It's very short and sweet. You present the original to your presiding officer or appointing authority or your supervisor, and between the two of you, decide who's going to send the Ethics Commission a copy, because we like to maintain these recusal forms. Next slide. Nepotism. This slide I always get a kick out of. And if nepotism exists, my brothers will root it out, right? The irony. Next slide. Okay. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties if there is reason to believe or expect that any person within your family or a household member is a party or participant, or will derive a direct monetary gain, or suffer a direct monetary loss, or somehow obtain an employment advantage by virtue of your participation. Next slide, please. The Code's prohibitions against nepotism apply regardless of whether, for example, your family or household member is objectively the most qualified candidate for the job, absolutely deserves that promotion. If it's gonna happen, it's gotta happen without you taking part. The policy underlying the prohibitions against nepotism is premised on the recognition that it is just really, really difficult for anybody to be truly objective when considering matters impacting their family or household members. Do we think you can do it? Maybe, probably, not the point. We remove from you any obligation of having to defend yourself after taking part in a matter involving a family or household member by just taking it off the table. And one more time, I'm going to hit you with that constitutionally founded goal of avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. Next slide, thank you. Some examples of nepotism, not an exhaustive list, but this will get you thinking about it. Hiring someone in your family or household is nepotism. Awarding a contract to someone in your family or household is nepotism. any decision regarding a family or household member's property, appointing someone in your family or household to a compensated position, and the participation in a disciplinary matter in which your family or household member's employment is at risk. These are examples of nepotism. Next slide, thanks. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not participate in the following: the supervision, the evaluation, the appointment, the classification, the promotion, the transfer, or discipline of anybody in your family or your household. Nor may you delegate any of those tasks to your subordinate, to someone who answers to you. If you can't hire your niece to work as a paid intern next summer for the town, you can't ask your assistant to do it instead of you. It's like you did it yourself. Next slide, please. So the Code of Ethics allows the Ethics Commission to approve what's called an alternate chain of command under situations where nepotism is at risk. So generally speaking, this happens in legacy jobs. Think police departments, fire departments, where people of the same family might be on the same department. What I want you to know at this point about the alternate chain of command is that the person who's going to step in for the person that has the conflict of interest has to be of equal rank to that person or higher. Okay, and the second thing I'd like you to know is that an alternate chain of command can't just be presumed acceptable prior to the issuance of a duly authorized advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission, and we will cover advisory opinions shortly. Next slide. Recusal. So I've had people say, all right, I've recused from a town council meeting. Do I leave the table, leave the room, leave the country? What do I do? Technically, recusal does not mean that a public official must leave the room if it's an open meeting, although I'll tell you right now, that's best practice. That's what I recommend everybody do. And I'll tell you why. Because someone may recuse from a meeting and go sit in the front row. Acceptable? Sure it is. The person might say, I'm not taking part in this. I'm going to text home, see if anybody needs anything from CVS. While that person is sitting there texting home to see if anybody needs anything from CVS, someone at the table is going to get a text from their home, from somebody maybe saying, Uncle Joe is out of the hospital. We're going to pick him up and take him out to dinner. Hope you can join us. My phone's going to ring at 8:31 the next morning from someone who wants to file a complaint because the person who recused went to the front row and texted the person still at the table who texted back, and that person participated. Save the Tylenol for another time. Do yourself a favor. Leave the room if you recuse from an open meeting. Now, that's an open meeting. If a public body is in executive session or private session, where it's closed to the public, once a public official recuses, no more right to be in the room, then any member of the public must leave the room. Okay? Next slide, please. All right, new topic, contracts. We're going to cover this briefly. No person subject to the Code of Ethics may enter into any contract with a state or municipal agency unless, next slide, the contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all the proposals considered and the contracts awarded. One more slide on this, please. So there are certain contracts for professional services that are customarily awarded without the competitive bidding. That's fine. They don't need to have competitive bidding. They still need to be awarded through a process of public notice and disclosure of financial details. And some examples of those professional services that don't require competitive bidding: physicians, attorneys, engineers, architects, accountants, land surveyors, psychologists. Let me put these last three slides into perspective. If you are subject to the Code of Ethics and are an employee of this town or an elected or appointed official of this town, you may not enter into a contract with, say, this town. Let's say that someone, an elected official, has a side hustle in the winter moving snow, and they have a plow and a truck, and they go to whoever does the hiring in this town for such a task in the winter and says, you know what? You don't need to put this out to bid. I can do it. I've got a good truck. I've got a good plow. I know every road in town. I'll give you a good price. Let's sign a contract. That would be very, very wrong unless it went out to bid. And even then, there's a question of whether the person could put in for it. It would depend on the circumstances. Next slide, please. Secondary employment, this is another topic under the code. We sometimes call this moonlighting. And some people subject to the code do have a second job in addition to their state or municipal employment. Here's the deal with that. As a person who is subject to the code of ethics, you may not accept secondary employment that does either or both of the following. That second job cannot impair your independence of judgment with respect to your municipal duties, nor may it require or induce you to disclose confidential government information that you acquire during the course of your official duties. Next slide. A number of people will ask the Ethics Commission for an advisory opinion. There's that term again. I promise we'll get to it, okay? An advisory opinion before they take that second job. And I'd like you to know what the Ethics Commission looks at when they're trying to weigh it out and to determine whether or not that would be an appropriate job for you to take in addition to your municipal or state position. They're going to look at the nexus between your public duties and your private employment, see how closely they're related. Any work that someone does outside of their public job has to be done outside of normal work hours without the use of public resources. A public official or employee may not appear before their own agency. The work has to be conducted outside of areas over which that public official or employee has decision-making jurisdiction. And this next one's important. A public official or employee may not use their public position to solicit business or customers for their private work or their private employer. Okay, this hopefully comes as no surprise to anyone. A person subject to the Code of Ethics shall not use or disclose for financial gain confidential information acquired in the course of their official duties. Please keep confidential information just that, confidential. And when I say for financial gain, not just for yourself, for that same group, yourself, your family, your business associates, your private employer. Next slide. Gifts. This is a popular topic at the Ethics Commission 12 months out of the year. So we're going to look at gifts. And here's what I'd like you to know. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, if you participate in making decisions, you may not accept cash or forgiveness of debt from an interested person. What's an interested person? An interested person is someone that has a direct financial interest in a decision that you either make or you help to make. And interested persons include employees or representatives of an individual, a business, an organization, or entity. Next slide. So what can you accept? Under the Code of Ethics, you may accept things of value up to and including $25 per instance and $75 per year per interested person. Now, I'm told that many moons ago, before I joined the Ethics Commission, that $25 limit was $150, and the $75 limit was $450. Maybe it's just me, but I would tend to think that as the years go by and the economy changes, that the amounts would go up, not down. But clearly, this gift regulation needed to be reeled in, and now it's $25, right? So one moment, I just want to get this out, but I will get to you. So if your agency or municipality has a zero tolerance policy on gifts, or one that is more strict than that within the Code of Ethics, you must follow your agency's policy. But let's say your agency or municipality says, yeah, we get it, Ethics Commission, you can't go around accepting gifts from interested persons, but $25 is not a lot of money. That's like a sandwich and a cup of coffee. We're going to make it 100. Nope. If that's the case, you follow the Ethics Commission. You follow the less fun one, okay? And I actually had someone at one of these seminars once say, do you mean to tell me that if an interested person wants to give me Bruins tickets, I can't take them? And I know Bruins tickets are more than $25. And I said, that is exactly what I'm trying to tell you, A+. And he's shaking his head. And I said, excuse me, anybody want to send you to a Bruins game before you had this job? And then he just kind of got silent. Did you want to ask a question, sir, about gifts?
Yeah, the Supreme Court just basically ruled on something similar to this about a politician in Indiana. Where
Craig, can you just use the mic a little closer? Thank you.
Okay. A politician in Indiana where they gave him a gift after they awarded the contract, and they said, that's fine.
Really?
Yeah,
But if a contract was awarded, isn't there still going to be a supervision of performance under the contract?
he was the manager of the town. So
Well,
I'm just throwing that out there. I think that shocked a lot of people that they come up with that ruling, but they ruled that there was
Yeah.
nothing illegal about it.
I may have to look that one up, but it doesn't apply to us. This is the Rhode Island Code of Ethics, but it was very interesting. And I will, you said Indiana.
That doesn't mean that somebody can't sue the state of Rhode Island over this in relationship to Indiana, correct?
Well, case,
Yeah, I
it'll be
think it-
case law, I would guess.
Well, is it federal? It's no, we're not even in
Well, the
that circuit.
Supreme Court ruled on
Oh,
it.
the Supreme Court ruled, the U.S. Supreme Court.
US Supreme
not the
Court.
Indiana Supreme Court.
No.
Oh, well, that could trickle down to us.
They've been making foolish moves lately.
Well,
Next slide, please. Transactions with subordinates. As someone who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not engage in a financial transaction. What do I mean by that? Private employment or consulting, giving or receiving loans, monetary or charitable contributions with an employee, contractor, or consultant over whom you exercise supervisory responsibilities. Next slide, please. Exceptions include financial transactions in the normal course of a regular commercial business or occupation. That would be an exception. Or if the subordinate initiates the financial transaction, that would be an exception. And there are certain charitable events that are sponsored by the highest official or governing body of a state or municipality, which is why, as a state employee, I can be asked by the governor's office to contribute to the United Way each year. Next slide. These slides are reminding me that I have an eye doctor appointment Thursday, and I'm very glad because I think my lenses are going to go up. Okay, the revolving door statutes. There are a number of revolving door regulations and statutes in the Code of Ethics. We're not going to cover all of them, but I want you to know why we have them. The purpose of a revolving door statute is to prevent government employees and public officials from unfairly profiting from or otherwise trading upon the contacts, associations, and special knowledge that they acquired during their tenure as public servants. The cooling off period that we have is 1 year under these revolving door statutes. Next, here's an example. No municipal elected official or school committee member, whether elected or appointed, while holding office and for a period of 1 year after leaving municipal office, shall seek or accept employment with any municipal agency in the municipality in which the official serves. Now, there's an exception for employment that was held at the time of the official's election or appointment. That's an example of a revolving door regulation. Next slide. Okay, as a person who is subject to the Code of Ethics, you may not represent yourself or anyone else before the agency of which you are a member or by which you are employed, or before any other agency if your agency is the appointing authority for that agency. You may not serve as an expert witness before your own agency. And these prohibitions continue for 1 year after you leave your public office or employment. Next slide. So what do I mean by representation? If I say you may not represent yourself or anyone else before your own agency. Representation is the participation in the presentation of evidence or arguments before an agency for the purpose of influencing the judgment of that agency in your favor or in favor of someone else. Next slide. So there is something called a hardship exception, where the Ethics Commission may grant a hardship exception, allowing you to represent yourself before your own agency or before an agency for which your agency has appointing authority. To obtain a hardship exception, you have to get an advisory opinion, one of those things I keep talking about and that I will get to. But first, I want to give you an example of a hardship exception. Let's say that somebody is a member of a local zoning board, and that person wants to put a shed in his backyard. And he's going in his backyard, he's looking to put where the shed's going to go. He finds the exact spot, and he thinks to himself, you know what? I'm going to have a problem with the town's setback ordinance. If I put this shed here, I need to ask for a variance to the setback ordinance. I need to get that from the zoning board I'm on the zoning board. What's a guy who wants a shed to do, right? He's going to go to the Ethics Commission and say, can I get one of those hardship exceptions? Because I want to put a shed in my backyard and I need a variance, so I'd like permission to go before the zoning board that I sit on to ask for a zoning or for a variance. And chances are strong, as the Ethics Commission has done, I would say 4 times since I've started 6 years ago, people are building sheds, zoning board members are building sheds all over the state. They're going to say, you know what, we're going to give you a hardship exception to let you go before the zoning board to seek a variance so you can put a shed in your backyard. But you're not taking part in the conversation or the decision, right? And you're going to let everyone at that meeting know that you got this formal advisory opinion saying it's okay. So the guy goes before the zoning board, maybe he gets his variance, he puts his shed in the backyard, it's a year later. A year later, the same guy buys a piece of property in town. And he says, this property's perfect. I'm going to construct a commercial building on it. I'm going to rent it to several tenants, and I'm going to make a whole lot of money doing it. But I have some matters to take care of before the zoning board that I still sit on, so I can do this. The Ethics Commission was so nice last year when I wanted my shed. I'm going back, and I'm going to ask for another hardship exception. And he goes before the Ethics Commission and he says, hi, it's me, the guy with the shed from the zoning board. I could use another hardship exception because I bought a piece of property. I'm going to build a commercial building on it. I'm going to separate it and rent it to commercial clients. I'm going to make a whole lot of money. How about that hardship exception? What do you think the Ethics Commission is going to say? No. Wait a year and a day till you're off that board. There is a big difference between wanting to go before your own agency to seek a variance to put a shed in your own backyard to keep your grill and the kids' bikes dry in the winter, and wanting to go before your own agency to try and launch a new commercial venture. Okay, next slide, complaints. We do get them at the Ethics Commission. They are never filed by one's friends, I can tell you that. We're not going to go too deeply into complaints, but there's one slide that we're going to stay on for a minute, and I'll let you know what I want you to know. Anyone can file a complaint against someone subject to the Code of Ethics. It's got to be on a form provided by the Ethics Commission. It's got to be signed under oath. You know what that means? No anonymous complaints. It's got to name the individual alleged to have violated the Code of Ethics. We call that person the respondent. It's got to identify the respondent's public office. It's got to detail the specific acts which allegedly violated the code. And a complaint is not public unless and until it's accepted by the executive director, and the complainant is not a party to the action. The complainant may get the ball rolling by filing, but it's not complainant versus respondent, it's state of Rhode Island, okay? The other thing I'd like you to know is that complaints before the Ethics Commission are civil in nature. They are not criminal in nature. The Ethics Commission does not put people into prison. That is not to say that someone facing a civil complaint before the Ethics Commission might not be in some hot water with the Attorney General's office or the U.S. Attorney's office for the very same conduct. But before the Ethics Commission, it is civil. The other thing I'd like you to know about complaints, pardon me, is that as of a few years ago, there is a moratorium on the Ethics Commission accepting complaints from citizens against candidates for elective office anytime sooner than 90 days before the election. And this came about because apparently, once upon a time, people thought there's an election coming up. I think I'll throw some mud against my opponent and I'll file a complaint. Who cares if it sticks to the wall? It'll be on the front page of the Providence Journal and my business will be done here. And then even if the complaint gets dismissed the next day, you're not going to see that on the front page. You're going to see it on page 17 with those 6-font public notices, right? So 90 days before an election is the cutoff for filing a complaint against a candidate. The exception is the Ethics Commission may file a complaint on its own, regardless of the time of year. Okay, I may have spoke too soon about that air conditioning, huh? Is it me? Maybe I'll sweat off a pound or two. Okay, we're finally at advisory opinions. Advisory opinions is pretty much the other half of what I do at the Ethics Commission, along with my colleague and friend Teodora Papa. Teddy and I probably draft 95% of the advisory opinions that leave our office, so we'd like you to know what they are, how to get one if you want one. Next slide. An advisory opinion is a legal interpretation of the Code of Ethics. It is issued by the Ethics Commission. It provides specific guidance about a particular and impending circumstance, and it's based on the representations of the petitioner. Your takeaways here? The Ethics Commission does not issue advisory opinions on hypothetical situations. One, who's got the time. Two, it's of no use, because these advisory opinions very much turn on the facts that drive them. And when I say they're based on the representations of the petitioner, that means we don't investigate facts of advisory opinions. We rely on the person, the petitioner, the person seeking the advisory opinion, to tell us the facts as they are and be truthful about them. And if one receives an advisory opinion based on true facts saying that you are allowed to do this under the Code of Ethics, that's protection in case someone files a complaint. Speaking of which, any person subject to the code can ask for an advisory opinion about a provision that may affect that particular person. You don't ask on behalf of someone else. The time to get an advisory opinion is before taking official action. Better to get, better to get permission today than to ask forgiveness tomorrow, right? Plus, the Ethics Commission does not issue advisory opinions on past conduct, prospective conduct only. Next slide. So, to get one of these advisory opinions, you mail, hand deliver, or email to the Ethics Commission a letter containing your signature, and I need all this info. I absolutely need your name, your phone number, your email address, because we're going to communicate back and forth when this draft is created. The name, jurisdiction, and powers of your agency, commission, or office. Tell me what your position is. Tell me your duties. Describe the nature of the potential conflict. Summarize the relevant facts as best you can. I'll get the rest of them out of you as necessary. You can't possibly be expected to know everything we need to know. Do let us know if you have any time constraints. Generally speaking, the Ethics Commission meets twice a month, once a month in the summer, always on a Tuesday morning, always at 9 a.m. And we try and issue these advisory opinions in the order that the requests come in, but sometimes somebody's in more of a hurry than somebody else. We certainly want to accommodate as best we can. After you submit your request, you're going to get a letter saying, we got it. You're going to get a draft recommendation prepared by a staff attorney. It will say draft on every page in big letters. They're usually 3, 4, maybe 5 pages long. The reason it says draft doesn't mean a thing unless and until a majority of the ethics commissioners vote to approve it. You are strongly encouraged to attend the meeting at which your advisory opinion will be considered by the Ethics Commission. They may have a question for you. You may have a question for them. It's painless. We do the advisory opinions right at 9, and I'd be surprised if anyone was at the meeting past 10 to get an advisory opinion. If it is approved, you will get a written copy. Our copy is going to go on our Ethics Commission website. And what I'd like you to know is both the advisory opinion, which is public anyway because it's on the website, and your letter asking for it are considered public records under the Access to Public Records Act. So if someone called my office and said, I want a copy of the advisory opinion issued to Lynn Radicius, along with the letter that she sent to you asking for it, that would need to be turned over. Look at us at financial disclosure already. We are wrapping up rapidly. Financial disclosure statements. We're not going to go too deeply into them, but there are a number of people, public officials, that need to file a yearly financial statement, right? And you can see here the people that do have to file these things. If you are required to file an annual financial statement, you are well aware of it because we know who needs to file. And Michelle sends reminders every year. They're due the last Friday in April or within 30 days after someone's initial appointment to a board, commission, or agency. Next slide. Here's what I'd like you to know. The purpose, why we have financial disclosure. I promise it is not to embarrass, annoy, or offend anyone. Financial disclosure helps ensure people acting in the public interest do not use their public positions to further their private financial interests. They help identify any conflicts between an official's financial interests and their public office. They increase the overall transparency in government appointments and decision-making. They help further the public's confidence in government. And what's wrong with that? No one's going to ask you what you paid for your house. No one's going to ask you how much money you have in the bank. Those are not the types of questions. What boards do you sit on as an officer? Where are you employed? Not how much do you make? Those sorts of questions to identify potential conflicts. And here it is. This is our slide with the contact information for my office. I will tell you this, as for advisory opinions, some people might just want to give a call and talk to someone at the Ethics Commission, and that's fine too. The only thing you need to realize is that if you get me on the phone and we're talking about a question, anything I say to you is purely informal advice and is not binding on those commissioners that I work for, right? If you need something formal that you can rely on with 100% certainty, you'll want to get a formal advisory opinion. But, you know, if I get a call, sometimes I'll get a call, it's 2 p.m, I'm on the such and such town council, and I need to know whether I can vote on a particular matter. And I'll say, well, when is this coming up? Well, the meeting's at 7. But you're not going to get an advisory opinion between now and 7 o'clock. But let's talk it through. And what people will ordinarily do, unless it's real clear to them that it's not a conflict, they may take their chances, or they'll just recuse out of an abundance of caution, or they'll get an advisory opinion and ask that the matter be continued so that the person can get the advisory opinion. There's any number of things you can do. So that's a lot of information. And this is where I say to people, do you have any questions? And this is when I can feel people thinking one of two things. The first is this: questions. I don't even know half of what you just said. How am I supposed to phrase a question? You've just been spitting stuff at me for 45 minutes. Perfectly understandable. If you have a question at a later date, you let me know. And you will be surprised at how some of this stuff is just going to stay with you as the days go on and the weeks go on. You know, this is not a course you take once in your lifetime and understand the whole thing. I've been with the Ethics Commission 5.5 years, going on 6 years, and I still scratch my head a number of times a week. The other thing I can feel people thinking is, yeah, I have a question. I prefer not to ask it in front of 30 other people. Thank you very much. I'll catch you privately, and I will certainly take my time packing up. But I will ask if anyone has a question at this point. Yes, ma'am. That's an excellent question. What I keep track of is the number of people that attend these trainings, not the names. Now, sometimes municipalities do their own thing and they keep track. And I'll tell you why we don't track the names. If someone were to be held to a higher standard because they attended an ethics training, I mean, everyone's subject to the code and everyone's responsible for acting consistent with the code. But if someone were held, let's say they came before the commission on a complaint and it turns out that they never had ethics training and they were punished more than someone, or someone who had ethics training was punished because they had ethics training, you should have known better. And they're punished more severely than someone who didn't. Not that the Ethics Commission would do that, but this is the theory behind it. I don't want people to not want to take ethics training on the chance that they might be held to absolutely understanding and knowing everything they heard tonight. Now, what if somebody, and I'm also convinced that someone can sit through this training 3 times and not come away with half as much as someone who picks up the code one night and reads it like that. Like, I don't know. So I don't want to penalize anybody for taking the training, and I don't want to keep anybody from wanting to take the training out of a fear that they're going to be held to a higher standard. But it's an excellent question, because you'd like to think if someone takes training, they're not going to step out of line, right? Because they've had the training. But you just don't know. What if someone's not feeling well, or they lost a parent that day, or they weren't, whatever. Now, the other thing I want to mention is this ethics training, since the fall of 2021, is now available in a pre-recorded format online that you get a link sent from me if you want a link to the training. It's pretty repetitive of tonight, but it's like 7 little individual modules on each of the topics that I created and recorded. They last about 6 minutes apiece. You can sit on your own time at your own computer and take it again. And I threw in a couple of multiple choice questions. At the end of each module, you don't have to pass it, you don't have to take it. Some people like to, just to say, I wonder if I've learned anything, let me answer these questions. So if anyone wants that, you can get that as well. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Years ago, I filed a complaint, but it wasn't on official form. It was about planning board appointment because one of the members of the council voted for her spouse on the planning board. And at that time, there is no violation, found out, to appoint a spouse on like a planning board's not compensated, but that's not a violation.
That must have been because the act, the official action of voting to appoint your spouse to the planning board, it sounds like because there's no compensation, where's the direct financial impact upon the spouse by their spouse's vote? But it does have kind of a weird, gives you a weird feeling about it, right?
Yeah, so, but in other words, a lot of these small towns are tough to get people to serve on boards.
I've heard that over and over, yep.
I've been involved in government for decades. So the problem is, there's some board that like have a stipend, so in that case, obviously you have to do it. But a lot of times, you see where people go to their spouse on some board commission or some relative, something.
Right, right. And if there's, if there's compensation, that's a problem. Right?
But, I look at something like the planning board, which is very influential and powerful.
Sure, sure.
There, questions?
Any other
While
questions?
this is on the agenda.
Is there any way to tell how many people are online? Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other questions?
9.
I-
I just have a comment.
Yes, sir.
What the state did a few years back by relieving us of some of our responsibilities and handing it over to state teams. Okay?
I don't know what you think.
He's talking about the Education Accountability Act with school improvement teams and superintendent's privileges and rights of school committee started to shift and change. The state law changed.
My only point is the fact that I feel.
Oh, I should educate myself on, more about school committees. I know, I don't, I appreciate anyone who includes public service in their life. And, you could all be home watching Jeopardy right now. And there's probably a lot more hours than any of us realize for public servants, so I'm very grateful. But I think school committees often have it as tough or tougher than a lot of others. I admire you for stepping forward. Thank you for your time. Good luck with the rest of your meeting. And I'm going to go sit in my cold car now.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, item B on the agenda is field trip request. I am recommending approval of the following requests for Chris Haberek and Stacy Peppard for 2 students and 2 chaperones to travel to the FFA National Competition and Convention in Indianapolis, Indiana from October 21st, 2024 to October 26th, 2024.
Second. There are questions? Nope, those in favor? It is unanimous, thank you.
Our next field trip request of the high school boys cross country, Coach Bill Haberek for 12 students and 2 chaperones to travel to Pilgrim Pines Conference Center cross country camp, West Swansea, New Hampshire, from August 25th through August 27th. This was a yearly trip prior to COVID.
Second. Some questions? Those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
Item C on the agenda is memorandum of understanding between the Westerly Public Schools and the Charahoe Regional School District to form a Rhode Island Interscholastic League High School Girls Swim Co-op Team. I am recommending approval of the memorandum of understanding between Westerly's Public Schools and the Cherry Hill Regional School District to form a Rhode Island Interscholastic League High School Girls Swim Co-op team. I need just to remind the school committee that this would be Title IX based on the number of girls that we have. We've never had enough girls to be able to have a swim team because you have to have more than 3. We now are up to 5. So we are proud of that, but we also need to make sure we comply with the Title IX.
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
So the cost of this is $3,500 for our portion.
Correct.
Any other questions? Those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
Item D on the agenda is the FY25 grant application with Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank for upgrading and updating of the Charlestown Elementary School wells and the emerging contaminants grant. I am recommending approval to submit the grant application to Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to upgrade and update the public water service wells at Charlestown Elementary School in the amount of $615,000 to eliminate and reduce the polyfluorinated substances, which also known as PFAS.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Questions? Craig?
Could we, Ned's coming back.
Go ahead, I may be able to answer it.
So, how are the numbers at Charlestown?
There are the 4. So that we monitor that, but we knew this. The wells have always been a concern, as you know, at Charlestown. It's an ongoing, and we've worked with the town as well. But the numbers of the other schools are within they're almost 0 or none. But Charlestown Wells is one of the reasons why we recommended some of the new construction, because it would have helped us handle the well infrastructure, which, as you know, $615,000 is a large expense. We were lucky enough to be able to coordinate to get this grant.
You said the numbers are 4.
4.
Yeah, it's parts per trillion, I believe. But it's a measurement of the PFAS content across, I believe it's 5 or 6 different categories. And those are aggregated to give a total number. That number needs to be below 4 when the EPA regulations kick in, which is in about 5 years. Right now, it needs to be below 20. That's the state regulation. So we're compliant with the state regulation, and there's every indication that we'll be compliant for the next 5 years. But then when the EPA regulation kicks in, we won't be compliant. Just as a follow-up, the campus also has an 8 count. I checked the latest test records. However, we have a middle school with no detection. I think we might have one other well here. So we could always cross-connect the well on the campus location and come up with a way to get water into the other system. But Charlestown is standalone, so we have to deal with that by itself.
I'm only asking for this information so the camera catches it all, so.
Just use your mic next
Yeah,
time.
Mike, sit down.
Thank you. I actually saw Larry and Donna and then Karen.
No, Gina answered the question.
Okay, Karen?
So if we don't get the grant, we have to come up with $615,000 to replace 3
Yeah,
wells.
we've been working alongside them, so we are pretty confident that we will get the grant.
Okay,
The U.S. Green Ribbon Award helps us get lots of grants like this.
that's excellent. Good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
Craig?
Is that 615 solely for Charlestown and we gotta
Correct.
apply for?
No, that's for Charlestown.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, those in favor? It is unanimous, thank you.
As you know, we need to begin elementary planning. So for the selection of necessity for school construction members, just to review, while we don't have the money yet to be able to hire architects, engineers for the planning of the elementary schools, it'll be important for us to capture the ideas that people want to pursue. So when we do put out an RFP, the architects and engineers understand the number of choices, and you'll be able to see the amounts of each one of the choices that you would like to see an architect put a proposal plan together. So that's why we're looking to begin in August. I am recommending both Greg Zenian and John Devereaux. They were already on the Necessity for School Construction team and have a good history of what's been done to date. And all other members, as you know, are required by RIDE. So I am recommending Greg and John. I don't know if you want to take it separately and then you do the school committee members. I would just say reappoint the same ones, but if anybody would like to do it differently, please let me know. But I am recommending the reappointment of the 4 members if they are in agreement that they would like to continue to serve on this committee, along with Greg Zenian and John Devereaux, who are also previous members. And again, every other member is required by right.
Somebody want to make a motion so we can discuss it? Or would you prefer to take them separately? You want to take them
I'd like to
separately?
take them separately.
Okay, fine. Somebody make a motion for John Devereaux and Greg Zenya.
So moved.
Okay, those in favor?
Yeah, I'm sorry, who was the one who made that? Was it Polly or Jeff?
It wasn't Polly.
I think Jess made it.
Jeff made it, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So those in favor? And you're abstaining, or
I thought we were gonna discuss it. No?
John and Greg? No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think there was necessary need for discussion, so do you have an opinion?
I just wondered if there are other people in the community maybe that would be interested that also have experience in construction. So rather than just, assume that they're the best candidate without putting it out to the community, like, how do we know they are?
Well, I mean, I
So
think
that was my thought.
one thing is that the Hopkinton Town Council did appoint Greg Zenian as their member on the building committee just recently. He
Yeah.
was a member on the necessity for school, and he was just appointed. Building committee didn't go on, so I think the Hopkinton Town Council put faith in Greg Zenian even on a separate board that had nothing to do with our vote. John Devereaux has a strong history of the electrical needs of the district.
Right.
While other people have maybe electrical background, they don't have the inner workings of the actual intricacies that we've been dealing with. So while, yes, I mean, we all have people that we know, I think these members represent a history that is important to the task. But again, you can vote no, that's, everyone has a chance.
My thought was not that I have any issue with the candidates. It was more just the fact of, has it been put out to the community in case there was anyone else that has experience that would be interested? That is entirely my thought. Also, does John Devereaux work for the school?
He's a vendor.
He's a vendor, so
He's
can
also
we
a community, he has to be, this is a community member, so there's no
Right.
stipend for this
So
position, there's no financial.
explain vendor, what you mean by that?
He has a hired electrical service.
He's
know, he's
hired
our-
to do, he's
He's
our
hired to do the
electrician.
electrical work when we
Okay,
have to call
so
it in.
he's our
Like when the telephone
electrician.
pole got on fire over the weekend. And he's also a member of the town. So the ride only requires you to be a community member. So he is one of many members of this committee.
Right, yeah. So I'm just gonna share my opinion is that I would like to see it go out to the community if there was anybody else interested that may have even superior experience. So I'm just putting that out there.
Sure. So based on those comments, let's vote again. Those in favor? And recusing or abstaining?
I'll abstain.
Okay, so then my next recommendation is to reappoint, unless the members that were previously on decide they don't want to be on, the school committee members that were previously on the necessity for school construction team. Does everybody remember who they were?
Yeah, they're listed.
Yeah.
So,
We're taking them separately.
yeah, it's all right here, so I can read them. It's Catherine, Craig, Karen, and Patricia. Do any of you have a desire to leave that committee? Okay, somebody make a motion.
So moved.
It's ethically wrong for me to make a motion. Fuck myself.
No, you're not getting any money.
I know there's no money involved, but
It's required by RIDE that you sit
the
on the
appearance, I don't want the appearance.
Let me make a motion to keep the four existing members who choose to stay on the committee.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Tom.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Those in favor? I'm gonna vote for myself, otherwise I don't have enough votes.
Can we, is there no discussion on that?
discussion.
If the motion was made?
I apologize. Do you have a point to make?
The only question I have is, this work is going to extend for probably a period of time, right?
It is.
Yes.
How does that affect members that are school committee members post-November?
Sure. Actually, the RIDE only requires one school committee member.
Okay, perfect. You answered my
So
question.
you have four, so you covered.
Yep, you answered my
And
question.
they become
Yep.
community members anyway, so, yeah.
Yeah, yep, no, you answered my question.
Larry?
What about Ned?
Well, Ned's required position, so Ned's position, whoever we hire would be that position. Right.
Yeah.
It's required by RIDE.
Now, the other question is, some seats are up for re-election.
Somewhat, say again?
That's
Some
just what
seats.
Tyler
That's what I
just said, yeah.
Right, remember, you're only required to have one school committee member.
Okay.
Yeah, not one per town, just one.
One.
We-
Ryan
we-
asks you to have one member.
Yeah, we are gonna struggle because Ned's a sink. You do realize that.
Oh, God.
Gonna get Donna started.
Catherine, do you have a question?
Yes. So yes, I understand we're only required to have one. However, say, things change in the election and there's someone that's on the committee that does not get reelected. Is there anything that precludes us from appointing another member?
No, we would put it on, if we have no members, we would have to ask the committee to appoint a member.
No, I don't mean if we have
a-
none. I mean, say we have the one, but someone who got elected is interested.
Well, it's a
So-
public meeting, anyone can attend, but, and there's no votes, I mean, everything comes back to the school committee.
Yeah,
So the necessity for school construction team can't
There's no
make
vote.
decisions, the school committee makes decisions, which is different than the building committee. So everything has to come back to this committee for a decision.
Karen?
I think post-election, typically what happens is
We review,
we review all of the subcommittees.
correct.
And make sure we filled all of those spots. So this would be one of those possible positions.
It would. If somebody then wants to put it back on an agenda, you can put it back on an
But
agenda.
I just wanted to remind the school committee that no decisions are made outside of the school committee because it's a different board way. The Charahoe Act is the building committee. That's the building committee that stands separate from the school committee. And those seats, community seats, are selected by the town council, and then the school committee selects the school committee seats, one for each town.
Any other questions? Okay, those in favor? Oh, did you have a question?
No, I just want to say, like any other committee, any member can attend. They won't have a vote, but any other member that's interested in sitting in on those necessity for school construction meeting are welcome to come. So,
Can I add to what she just said? They might not have a vote,
Use
but
your
they have a voice.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And Charahoe has always been open to that.
Yeah, everything's open, folks. You can all come. Make it a party. It's not super secret. You can attend, you can voice your opinion. Any other comments? Those in favor? Thank you. Okay, that was unanimous.
Okay, the next item is outside management study. This item was requested by Craig Luzon in response to requests from Hopkinton Town Council Vice President Scott Bilhurst. Included in the packet are documents submitted by Hopkinton Town Councilor Sharon Davis.
Craig, I'm gonna open it up to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I've heard Scott ask for many, many, many years. Let's at least discuss it. I'm glad you gave some of the information because I did have a pertinent question. Your main goal here is for tax relief only.
Not only.
Well,
I'm sorry, what did you say, Craig?
Hit for tax relief only.
Can I read my statement?
there's the chair.
Typically what we do is we have the committee ask questions first. So is anybody feeling if they'd like to go before Sharon, before she reads?
Well, I was gonna wait
Yeah.
till
That's
this
fine.
unfolds, so.
No problem. Done?
Yeah, my question is to Mr. Hurst. I have sat at many meetings where you've requested this management study, and I just, at some point in the discussion, I would like you to explain to us what motivates that? Do you feel that there are inefficiencies that need to be addressed for us going outside of what you're already seeing we're doing with the schools and the budget? So,
You should. So so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have Mrs. Davis read her statement.
okay.
Then the school committee will have an opportunity to expound upon that. And then we can go to members of the public.
Okay.
All right, Mrs. Davis?
Thank you. The last Charahoe facility and financial study was conducted in 1999 by MGT of America Incorporated. The study was commissioned to address the facility and financial needs of the district for the next 10 years, 1998 through 2008, based on a rapidly increasing enrollment projection up to 4,470 students by 2008. As of 2023, the 1999 enrollment projections were found to be very inaccurate. The highest actual district enrollment was 3,891 students in 2001, was reduced to 3,746 students in 2008, and has decreased to 3,008 students in 2023. During the same time frame, the Charahoe budget increased from $32,844,641 in 2001 to $50,327,187 in 2008, and was $62,181,037 in 2023. Clearly, it's time to conduct a new management audit to cut costs. A similar audit request was made by Senator Elaine Morgan in a January 14th, 2020 letter sent to me. She urged the school committee and the 3 town councils to conduct an independent financial audit and independent management study. She also felt that residents of all 3 towns would benefit from these 2 studies, both by achieving cost savings and by having a management plan to continue to provide students the education they deserve, but at a price taxpayers can afford. Senator Morgan's comments inspired me to ask Governor McKee in June 2023 if there was state funding for these studies. Per our Hopkinton Town Council's July 17th, 2023 letter to Cheyenne Cazalt, the Director of Municipal Affairs, we requested funding for a management audit that extends beyond the typical financial audit. We wanted the audit to examine the way resources are applied, determine the efficiency and effective application, assess whether the desired results are being achieved, and create actionable recommendations. We would model our audit on the Continuous Business Process Improvement Study management audit conducted by the Prince George's County School System in 2016. And I sent you an introduction to it, and I sent you their RFP, and I don't know if they got the final result, the final report after Ernst, et cetera, did their study.
It's
But
on their website with the packet, and it's on the
Okay,
district
good.
website as well for the public.
Okay. And so we decided we would have studied 3 of the 5 areas that they studied. We would study business and management services, information technology, and support services. Prince George's County Schools also studied human resources and curriculum. We were not interested in those 2 areas because our school district personnel are doing a great job of implementing Rhode Island mandated curriculum requirements. Based on the Charahoe 2021-2022 report card, our school district is performing better than the state average by most educational measurements. The ELA, which I think is English language, Charahoe scores 44.8% of the people using it, doing it, versus the state is 33.1%. Charahoe's math is 40.2% versus the state of 26.6%. And science, our students score 51.8% versus the state 30.7%. We believe that we can find cost savings in other areas that would result in tax relief for our residents. Based on my research, I identified 3 Rhode Island firms who can perform the management audit for between $60,000 and $80,000 or less, and submitted that cost request for funding to the educational representative from Governor McKee's office. Unfortunately, we were told there are no funding available. I also received the same answer from the Rhode Island Foundation. I was trying to find a way for the 3 towns not to have to pay for these audits. So that's why I was looking. Tonight, I am suggesting that the Charahoe School District find the funding in your budget, which means ultimately it comes back to the towns. I am also suggesting that some of the money spent for athletic trophies, my favorite complaint, $45,000, be diverted to the cost of the study. As a former buyer, I would be happy to work with the Charahoe Superintendent, the Director of Finance, and School Committee to create a customized RFP that was approved by all parties. Thank you again for your consideration. I'm looking forward to your reply.
Thank you. I know Superintendent Picard has a couple of statements she'd like to make in relation to that.
So I just want to go back because, and I appreciate Sharon's due diligence. I think she always works really hard to try to provide the information to the best of her ability. But I just want to clarify a few things. The enrollment studies that happened in '99 and 2008, those are under old laws. And in 2018, the state law changed that the districts every 5 years had to invest in a capital improvement plan, which included an enrollment study. One of the reasons was because of the inaccuracies in earlier days. So what happens now is when they do enrollment studies, they must look at birth rates, they must look at death, they have to look at permits pulled, etc. So that law was updated based on concerns of overall projection. So we now know that our enrollment study data is much more efficient. However, families still have options. You may still have these students, but they'll homeschool or they'll to go to Catholic school or private school. So they exist, but they have opportunities that are maybe different. But I can assure you that the enrollment studies done since we have been here are much more accurate based on the new law compliance. So that was one. I know you had said management audit to cut costs. I want to be careful when you look at the Prince George County study, it was based off, the RFP was based off the findings and recommendations from their audit. So as you all remember, there were no findings or recommendations from a brand new audit company that we just utilized. So they had very specific direct interest in Prince George because of several findings and recommendations in their report. We do not have that. The other thing I want to make sure, when we talk about no actions, create actionable recommendations. Part of our review was the district did participate in a study, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, and there were actions that were mentioned that should happen. No actions were taken. So there was money invested in a study and nothing came from that study. I don't know about you, but I don't like spending money for things that are not going to be fruitful for students or fruitful for the community. So I think it's important for us to recognize that no actionable items came from the last time the district had been involved in this type of work. Also, when they came from the findings and recommendations, they meant, like Sharon mentioned, human resources and curriculum she wouldn't need to dig into. I think Scott Bill Hurst would disagree. Councilor Hurst has mentioned our staffing. I believe there was a concern around our staff, so that I think that he would recommend. But I do think it's too broad. And I'm not a proponent because I think what's missing, one, is that there already exists the data. RIDE put up the data 2 years ago. We've shared the data with the school committee. We've shared the website with the school committee. The data that you're all looking for exists. So my question is, in the school district financial data located on the RIDE's website, and just for the public, I'm going to read, with millions of dollars being spent to educate our young people, it makes sense that decision-making data be available to district leaders, school leaders, state leaders regarding where our resource dollars are being spent. It also talks about performance, because as you all know, we have to ensure that our students are making their goals. So the following resources were created to ensure we had this information that did not exist many years ago. This is in the last 2 years. It's the Uniform Chart of Accounts. So when that system went into place, you'll all remember your budgets changed. Some of you knew or may not. That's why you have the budget you have, with all the different codes and why we have to change different items when the state, so that they can track our information. And that's a system of numbers and method of accounting that provides transparency, uniformity, accountability, and comparability of financial information to all schools and districts. And then there's 4 other: Insight Finance Reporting System for school district expenditures prior to 2009. It has the E-rate program, which reviews federal programs that support technology and library infrastructure of schools. It has classroom initiatives, statewide bonds that would provide access to classrooms, and then ESSER disbursements. So my recommendation would be that the school committee take time, and the town councils take the time to review this data and look and compare across the state on what this says, because I think a lot of the questions that people have are answered in that data. I just don't think people have taken the time to, and I'm not saying it's easy. I know we did it with the budget committee. We walked it through, so I don't know if Tyler or Jess or Karen and somebody else was on that. Andrew. Want to share the information, but I think you all felt that that data was important, that it's what people keep talking about, but it's not necessarily And I'm happy to have Ride come in and do that presentation. Unfortunately, the gentleman that did it for all of you just left Ride, and he was phenomenal. So hopefully they get somebody as good. But I do think that may be the best, maybe like a larger meeting for town councils and school committee to ask the questions using the data before we, utilize dollars in ways that are not going to provide information that we can use. Thank you, Sharon. And no, just $45,000, Sharon, that is not for awards. There's a category. So it's awards, it's uniforms, it's first aid needs, and for our athletic trainer, just so you know.
Oh, I thought it was trophies.
No, that is part of that, but there's a lot, the line item is large.
45,000 for trophies is just
No, we looked it
crazy
up,
to me.
Sharon, I can promise you.
All right.
Catherine
Well,
and
the reason I really wanted to have this management audit was we've heard it. We need it. And nobody knew exactly what it would provide, which is why I went looking and came up with the Prince George's County RFP and their final report, et cetera, so people could get a feel for what you get out of a management audit. And I have participated in that kind of thing at a lot of large companies that I've worked for in my career. And I think, they usually ask the people who are doing the job, well, how could we do it better? That's one of the questions that the consultants ask. And I don't think we've ever had that time to go and talk to the people who are doing the job if they could find a way to do it more efficiently. And they might find that maybe there would be cost savings. But I'm not hung up on the dollars, because also the average charge for per student compared to the state Charahoe is less. So I don't think we're overspending the money, but I was just wondering if in fact we could become more efficient, and then maybe that way we could reduce the costs.
I'm going to go to Ned next.
Pardon?
Ned had a response.
Okay.
Yeah, I took a look through the documentation, and also, based on the earlier news, I'm saying this with genuine interest in the community doing well, and I don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. But there's a couple of things I observed. Prince George's County is a very, very different situation than we have.
Extremely different.
Yeah, I know.
Apples and oranges.
But it's over $1 billion, and that study cost actually rings pretty true, because I think they spent about $500,000 on an audit of grading and some curricular items, which, based on their size, is roughly where $50,000 would get us. What I would offer, though, is exactly what we've been talking about, which is to take a look at the data that exists, because the Uniform Chart of Accounts is a requirement of the state of Rhode Island, which breaks out our spending as compared to each other school in a very exact manner. Everybody's supposed to report their finances the same way. And as Councilmember Davis noted, we know that in a lot of measures we're at or above the averages for the state. What I would suggest is just what the superintendent brought up, which is, what's your return on investment? So in one manner, I'd say, yes, expenses are something to focus on. I do think there's efficiencies that can be gained from looking at different things. A case in point, we looked at bus stops. There's also a political cost for some of that, because it may make residents uncomfortable, but it gets us to a place where we're more efficient. There's a whole other side of the ledger, though, that is not talked about, I believe, in Prince George's, nor in the considerations we've had so far. And it kind of came to me when we were looking at Hope Valley, which is, what is the revenue side of this conversation? Because that's literally the entire other half of the ledger. So if we are 65 million-ish in expense, we are equally 65 million in revenue. That is tax revenue, as we all know. It's also grant revenue, state revenue, so on and so forth. I would invite or suggest that if you're going to spend this kind of money, the towns also consider some kind of revenue side to look at what are the different options to collect tax income. Is there business income that can be derived? Is there grant income that can be derived? Are there other opportunities with the state to partner that may offer some offsets to what we're spending money on. Because the reason I come up with a suggestion, if you do look at our data, you will see that we've expanded our income from tuitions, we've expanded our income from grants, we've expanded our income from other sources. And I don't know that all districts have been able to leverage that kind of revenue side of the ledger. So that's something I would put on the table, that if you're going to spend this kind of money, look at the revenue side where there may be some opportunity as well.
Well, Hopkinton has been doing a lot of using federal grants and getting money from the state. So, because if not, we wouldn't have a capital. We don't have enough capital to do anything. So we've won a lot of money recently from the state in grants, so that we can have a new community center, so that we
And
can
Sharon,
do things.
we have, I think our auditor is on tape saying that our fund balance should be, I think you almost got out of your chair when she said 5 to 7%. And when Ned and I were just in DC and Dr. Camilla regarding the Green Ribbon Award, they were shocked that our fund balance is only at 2%. They could not believe that. They're like, how do you even function on a 2%, 2.25%? But to Ned's point, we can't have, everything can't live on the back of the schools. We want to be efficient, absolutely. But remember, the school committee's responsibility is legislated to be student first. Fiscally responsible, student first. But I know everyone, there's sort of this contention between the towns, but Charlestown's tax dollars are lower, but there's economic development. Whether you believe it's because of the coastal or whatever, there's economic development. Richmond and Hopkinton do need to have more of a profile for that business side of it. You can remain rural, but it always can't be on the side of the district to be able to find how to alleviate tax. Because so while it's 70%, Charleston has a different set of income coming in that offsets that. That's that business development. Well, like I said, whether you believe it or not, like I said to the chair Juicy, I was at Top Golf with my nieces, and I said to myself, this would be a great, I mean, the ecosystem in Richmond and Hopkinton are a golf community. What a great, lucrative business this could be if we tapped into that. But I think I'm hoping with the economic development committees that you're trying to establish, that will also offset, because, well, when you look at our side of the house, what's going up is, and we're not going up even close to inflation. And we can continue to show that. And I think people are often impressed in the state about what we're accomplishing and how we're doing it with the dollars and grants. A lot of our good work, the Green Ribbon Award, is from grants. It's because we have invested our time and energy for the sustainability of our work, partnerships with our grants. And we've been able to access that work. But I appreciate it, but while I think we're always about cutting costs and we're always looking for efficiencies, it can't be at the cost of student outcomes. And I don't think you're saying that.
No, I'm not.
I saw Catherine and was it Polly or Jess? And okay.
Okay. So Sharon, thank you so much for the work you've done on this. And I would just like to say that having a lot of data and information transparency is a lot different than having expert eyes that are being hired that are specifically trained, gifted, experienced in looking to improve efficiency. Big businesses that are very profitable do this all the time. I have a brother-in-law who was an efficiency expert for years. It is no insult to all the good that Charahoe is doing at all. It's just recognizing that there are people that are skilled specifically in that area. I would agree that personnel cost is big, and I wouldn't say that that was something that shouldn't be on there. It says business and management services, information technology support services. I personally believe that this is something that has been talked about for years. It should be done. And again, it's very different to say, the school committee, the town councils, they have access to so much data, so utilize it. It's very different to say that we can do that as opposed to have an expert being hired. So I do think that it's something we should do. And I also am told by Sylvia Thompson that the 3 towns did vote to do this and the money was put in the Charahoe budget of $100,000. I don't know. I don't have this as firsthand knowledge, but she was on the town council at the time. She said $100,000 was put in the budget for this and it was never done. So to me, that's just another reason. And again, I wasn't the one on the town council. I am just relaying the information. So I do believe we should do this.
Thank you. Jess and then Polly.
So I also want to thank you for bringing this information to us. I know you're not the usual person who discusses it. Mr. Hurst is the one who always brings it up. And I haven't heard him ever back up his request with any information. Other people seem to know what this is more. I've looked it up. I can't find any. I've never found any studies of other public schools where this has happened.
Yeah, that's why I gave that.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. It's been difficult for me to find it. I think we do have to be upfront about some of the motives. Like, I appreciate the information you put in here, but your letter also says 3 times this is about cutting costs or what taxpayers can absorb. And I think that's the goal of Mr. Hurst, from what I've heard from him. And it kind of brings up what we went through with the bond and with the budget and talking about closing Hope Valley and how that was a way to create efficiencies and to consolidate our schools and to address enrollment. And it doesn't make it easy, even if the math is there. None of the discussions that we make that may have more efficiencies across the line are easy when the math is there. And even in some of the text from what you presented, it said, upfront investments needed to create later savings. There's a clear opportunity for efficiencies, but these require investment. And that was similar, the same discussion we were having with the bond. Like, if we make this investment and build these new buildings, we'll have efficiencies later on down the line, but it's going to cost money. And as far as the data from RIDE, that was something that they came and they presented to us, and it's difficult. If you look at this portal, there's so much data in the Uniform Chart of Accounts and on the RIDE website. But what we had talked about with the budget subcommittee was them coming to us and doing a presentation. So I'd really like to put that back on the table at some point, because when you have a guide to show you how to use it and the different levels of interaction, it's very helpful.
Thank you. Polly.
Sharon, I have nothing to add or nothing to question. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time. This is a lengthy letter and there was quite a bit of information attached. So I just wanted you to know that I appreciate you taking the time to run this down.
Thank you, thank you. And I will say, when Governor McKee came to our Learn 365 signing at Hopkinton, that's the time that I asked him if he had money. And Gina said afterwards that she would be willing to participate in the management study provided that we all agreed on the recommendations. Because she thinks that
my said,
Yeah,
well, I
because
didn't offer up the money.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't say we'd pay for it. I said,
Because she
I would want agreement across the town council in a
Right.
vote that the recommendations that were made were acted upon.
Right.
Because I do think, and to your point, Catherine, it's interesting to me that we want outside experts, but you hire people to do your jobs and then don't necessarily believe that they have the information necessary. I want to be clear. I've been involved in the Johns Hopkins Report Providence. It was a very lengthy study. I've been involved in efficiency reports. I was part of the Great City Schools Key Performance Indicator study. So I've done this work. You have somebody that you hire at a very good cost that has done this work. But yet, for me to say I want to spend money in our budget, if you all find the money someplace else, that's great. But I have a hard time giving more money to things that will not be actionable or not be done in a budget that I am using grant funds to provide student support services.
I had Karen, and then I had Craig, and then I had Donna.
Sharon, thank you so much for putting this together. I appreciate it. And I know that you've gone above and beyond to try to find funding for this, and I appreciate that as well. Your figure of 60 to 80,000, I'm not sure where that came from.
CLA is one of the vendors, one of the 3 vendors, and they quoted 80,000. And I think that I have another vendor. I think I can get it for less. So that's why I
Okay.
put that number out.
So that's
A
just the-
normal, just financial audit for Charahoe, you've paid about 40 or 45, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a little bit more than 40 or 45. So that's how I came up with those numbers.
Okay, so during this past budget cycle, we cut $80,000 for a bus by redoing the bus lines. We cut $80,000 for a bus. We cut $152,000 from the fund balance. And we cut $434,831 by cutting kindergarten from Hope Valley Elementary School. And now, looking for $60,000 to $80,000 to do a study seems inefficient to me. I do think we should start with RIDE coming in and doing a presentation and looking at the data that's already available. And if at that point, the feeling is still there, then perhaps all of the towns, because you even stated the school committee and the towns would fund this.
Yeah, I know.
But I appreciate
I
it.
gave up.
And, no,
Trying to find
you-
extra funding.
Sharon, you've gone above and beyond, and I don't think this was your pony. I don't think this is what you brought to the, you picked up Mr. Hurst.
Yeah, I
don't blame him. I mean, it's
I'm tired of hearing it.
correct.
And I thought, even as I tried to say about Gina, that she really thinks that if you had the study, you might find out that the Charahoe is very, very efficient and actually needs more people. That was what I started to say. So, but at least it puts it to bed, and the residents will understand and appreciate what Charahoe has done. If some third party, unfortunately, you need to have a third party say they're doing a fabulous job before people really believe it, and that's where I'm.
I think that's
where
why
I'm
we
going.
appreciated the financial audit of a new company that came in and said it was the first time ever they had no recommendations, no findings, so that we can, that the school committee can be proud and feel that the financial information that they're getting is strong. So, and I think that sometimes it can go unnoticed because of a platform, and I appreciate you saying it, Sharon. The efficiencies would come in, but not through money, because if someone monitored me for a day to see what I have to do that's not a superintendent's job, it's inefficient. So we're paying staff like me to do things that are not efficient and take away from the work, which is my point. What you're going to see from a management study, based on because I've had to go in to do them, is they're going to say, well, you can go up to contractual size. Okay, school committee, how did that go over when you tried to cut classrooms and raise class size? The place gets loaded, right? You saw what happened with Hope Valley, just cutting kindergarten, right? From Hope Valley, it's not easy, but Ned and I came in saying, and the school committee knew this because it was part of the plan. Hope Valley, Barry Ritchie told you in 2005, John Peeney told you in 1999, Hope Valley needs to close. It's not going to be efficient for the district. So things have come up, but it's not easy to make the decisions that come along with what. And I'll be honest with you, I don't believe going to contractual class size is good for students at any grade level. I think while you have it, and you may need to do it in certain classrooms, you've got to be thoughtful about who those students are, what is their data. It's not just, this will be perfect for this student. And I'm sure if we did it, you would have parents at the podium who would explain why this is not the class to do this with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, why when I make decisions and then makes decision, it's not it's not in a box. We all collaborate with our administrators. We're always, we're 5 years, 10 years down the road of what we already know sort of the plan of getting even more efficient. But what I can tell you is there's a lot of inefficiencies because we have one person who does a smattering, and I'm your communication person. Everything that goes out, if God forbid there's a crisis, people want to know, well, you need to update the FAQ. Well, I'm the one who updates the FAQ, and I have to be in a school as well. So I think that's where people would be surprised about if the audit comes in, which is why I said, if you can find the money to do it, and people, before it's done, says, yes, what comes forward, we commit to make sure it happens. I'm all aboard.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I just have a question about
And I don't even know if it's
Pat,
still.
Pat, there are like 3 other people first.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were looking at me.
No, I'm sorry, because
Okay.
it's Donna and Craig, and then I'll come to you. Thank you.
Everything, thank you, Sharon, for doing this. You're right. And I so appreciate your candor. And let's just talk about this, discuss it, make a decision, and put it to bed for at least a while longer. I have so many things to say and agree with everything that was said, particularly with what Gina had to say. I think we worked really hard at cutting our budget down to what I considered to be pretty bare bones. And I can't even imagine coming up, where would we find any kind of dollars, let alone $80,000 in this budget to do a study that we are not sure would produce the kind of information that would save us money. It probably will produce the kind of information that will cost us more money, that we will not be able to do because the towns will balk at the increase in budget over what they would recommend. As Ned said, it's comparing apples and oranges. I know Prince George's County, and it is absolutely not the demographics of Charahoe in the least. So it's very odd. As a model for management study, it would work for the topics, but not to compare the resulting information
And
that we get from
that is why I wanted to, we would have to customize our RFP. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the other thing that Ned said, and I would add to it, is we saw the hoopla that happened with when the decision was made for financial reasons to close Hope Valley School. I think any management study, I don't think you have to spend $80,000 to find out that's one of our biggest deficiencies, is to close Hope Valley School, to cut the kindergartners, to do all the things that, as Gina said, would be very difficult for our parents to accept, okay? I think we're doing a very efficient job. As long as I've been on the school committee, I think it's been extremely efficient. I think we have the talent in the staff to make the decisions, the management decisions that any study would find to be needed. And I just don't see the need to spend that money right now. That's my opinion, anyway.
Thank you.
And maybe, Mr. Hurst, maybe you could tell us where you think the efficiency should be before we commit to spending that kind of money. Because all I heard was we need a management study. Management studies to me implies that we're going to nitpick every little thing in our personnel and the staffing and the number of teachers and the size of our classes and all of those things. And I don't see the need for it. I think we do a good job. We have a good system. Why do we need it examined at that level for that kind of money? I would not vote yes on for this. Thank you.
Understand.
Anyway.
Craig?
Let Scott get up and talk
Well,
first.
before we do that, because I think that's going to get into a little bit of a conversation, Pat, do you have something, a question?
Yeah, I just, I know we implemented it in the federal government, the Lean Six Sigma, and that was a way to find efficiencies and eliminate duplications of work, and even the amount of steps that people took in a building, because that's all time. Time is money. And I didn't know, and we had it at we all were required to take some training, and then we did have people that went on and did the black belts and all that. And I didn't know if any of the schools are doing any of that Lean Six Sigma, or if any. I know the corporations were doing it, and I thought they're still doing it.
Yeah, not that specifically, but for example, with the trust comes in the review of like our maintenance. So where the supplies should be held, how often, even when we did the, we did Project Adam defibrillators, we had to pace out the timing of how many steps. So, everyone, the nurses would say, oh, we need 50 of them. No, we need this many per step, so that we would be able to do that. So it exists, just not in the same way that you're saying. But the same thing, efficiencies through like I am someone who can go in, Ned and I use the data that RIDE provides. Actually, we were part of the pilot because we said, we need this data. You have to be able to provide it. We're giving you all of this. And then they've adapted it and they continue to update it based on questions that we ask, which is why I think it's important to sort of know what exists and how to get your questions answered so that you can sort of break down what is it you're really looking for. So is it, like I said, a management study is going to say, okay, your class sizes are 28 to 30 at high school, load them up. That's not necessarily going to be something that the parents are going to love. So there's always a balance when you're talking about students, because it's not necessarily, like Ned will tease me, but they're not widgets, so we can't, manufacture them in the same way. But we do look for the efficiencies. One example is the maintenance and the custodial, which we've been, as you know, very short in with the vacancies. So that's provided a lot of inefficiencies because we can't get certain work done sometimes.
I'm going to make one comment, if I may, Craig. I'm going to jump in front of you. Thank you. One of my issues with an outside management study at this level isn't the findings of an outside management study, and I would certainly support if we were going to implement them. My chief concern is if we have an outside management study and we're taking into account all of the various stakeholders that we have, 3 town councils, a school committee, and the public, we need to really narrow down what the questions are, what we're looking for, and there would have to be some agreement, because otherwise it's a waste of everyone's time, because you'll have somebody pointing out saying, well, that's not what I cared about. I cared about this other thing instead. I don't know that you're going to get that consensus. And that's my chief concern is if we were to find the money, which I'm not sure that we can, if we were to go through the exercise of an outside management study, you're not going to get that consensus amongst all of those different public officials. And it will be a waste of everybody's time. We've had management studies in the past. As the superintendent pointed out, nobody did anything with the findings of them. We looked at an outside management study when we talked about Senator Morgan's letter, and at that time we determined that we weren't willing to take that money out of our budget for an outside management study. So that's my chief concern. Again, it's not the findings of an outside management study that concern me. It's gathering enough consensus amongst 4 governing bodies to make sure that we're hitting everybody's sweet spot and then making sure it counts for something. So thank you. Craig?
Let him just.
So, Mr. Hurst, would you like to come up?
That was courtesy, Scott.
I've been waiting a long time, and this is.
We know you have.
I believe strongly in an outside management study, and long been interested in government, and I think, but I'd like to make a comment about the MPT study that's very rarely ever mentioned. That same study recommended an equalized tax rate in the Charles School District, which would be to the detriment of the town of Charleston and an asset to the towns of Richmond and Hopkinton. And that was a serious sticking point. I support an outside management study, and I believe it's a very positive thing. The fact of the matter is, and I do institutionally respect the Charter School Committee, because I voted against the Hopkinton Town Council going to the state for an outside management study, and Steve Moffett and I did, and the rationale is very interesting because I was a poli-sci major, and one of the things I always respect is the powers of the office you hold. And it's not the power of the office of the Town Council of Hopkinton, because we have no institutional prerogative to even approve the Charahoe budget like they do in a single-member school district, like North Providence, which the superintendent is a member of. But the Town Council of North Providence has the power to approve or disapprove the school committee budget. Well, we don't have that power in a regional school district. I believe that educated people get multiple ideas from different people, not from one source. And particularly, I remind you that the town of Hopkinton spends 79% of its tax dollars on education. The town of Richmond spends 80%. So the ability, even if it's a small amount, particularly the delegates or representatives, I should say, from those 2 towns have an obligation to their communities to make sure that town services are maintained and addressed. I also believe that you should have credentialed people. I don't believe that if you have an outside management study, you have credentialed people who know the issues in other school districts. And I think that's a positive. Getting information from multiple people with credentials is a positive thing, because even well-educated people, even credentialed people, even experienced people have disagreements and different perspectives. I believe that we should have an objective credential experience firm with a record of examining school district operations removed from both sides in this debate. I think my proposal is the best, specifically because it removes politics as much as possible from the process. You don't have the school department, you don't have those of us who've been school budget critics, and you have a professional outside look at the school district operations, and people can draw their conclusions after it's issued. I wouldn't have my fingerprints on it. The school department would have their fingerprints on it, and you can do what you may with the management study, but I think periodically they should be done. How extensive it should be done depends upon how much money you wish to spend. And we should look at staffing, goods and services, and what should be contracted out and what should be done in. We should take into consideration the financial issues of the town. But I want to remember President Dwight Eisenhower. When he retired as president, he talked about the military-industrial complex, about people who had a financial interest in the military and defense spending. What we have in America today is a public education complex that has a personal interest in expenditures for public education, whether it's employment and goods and services with local school districts. So we do have a public school education complex in America, and that's one thing that we never talk about much. With that, I thank you for your time. I urge you to support our outside management study.
Thank you. I'm going to give Gina a shot, and then you.
So thank you, Councilor Hurst. I appreciate your passion for the topic. I think I agree with the efficiencies, but I disagree with the path forward based on your review. So you had mentioned that the representative, I am on the school committee in North Providence. And if Hopkinton was not part of the regional district, as it wasn't when the Charahoe Act was passed, it would cost more money for the town, because you, based on federal and state law, you'd have to hire your superintendent. That's required by law. You'd have to hire your special ed director. That's required by law. So and then you have to have your teachers and students. So what happened was, and I'm sure you know this because you like to do your due diligence with the history, it was costing the towns more money. And I think when Charlestown originally, they looked to remove themselves from the Charahoe Act, they also found that it was not going to be cost effective. It is more cost effective to be regional. However, when you mentioned the representatives for Richmond and Hopkinton, first and foremost, as a school committee, and I know this because I am a school committee member, is students. Your obligation is to students, not taxpayers. Your budget, you are responsible for the budget to ensure the interests of students are met. The town council is responsible for taxes. Now, I've said this before, we must be fiscally responsible and efficient, but we are legislated to ensure that the school committee is first and foremost about students. So I just want to, so there is clearly, so if Hopkinton said, oh, you know, there's a way for you to remove yourself from the Charahoe Act, and I think we all know that you would find, similar to Charlestown, that it would cost more money, which is why it hasn't happened. But I do think, you know, instead of sort of thinking about Charlestown as a contentious, I would think about why they are a great partner and how they invest in the community to enhance the district as an educational facility for the work of the students, which they have been a fabulous partner. And maybe thinking about talking to other districts who are losing enrollment to get into the regional Charahoe Act, like South Kingstown, whose enrollment is significantly lower. But I don't think you're going to find people entering in if we can't collaborate and communicate across the four bodies. So I do think, while I believe you think the management study will show inefficiencies or efficiencies in certain areas, I don't believe that based on the fact that I've done this work, and that's what I did when I came in. I've continued to look through, and I think the school committee knows, I'm always providing efficiencies, but it takes time and it takes, I've been doing it through attrition. So if you've noticed, other districts have laid off 30, 40 teachers. Charahoe did not have to do that. Now we passed the budget, and if we didn't pass the budget, we all knew the end was going to be Hope Valley closing completely. That was the conversation that we had. That wasn't an easy conversation. It's not the conversation that our parents want to hear. But in the end, if the budget moving forward, and that's why it's a ongoing item, if the budget is level funded, our first go-to is going to be Hope Valley Elementary School, because unless the school committee has other ideas, which I sat here at the budget meetings and no one offered up suggestions on how else to cut, because we are very efficient. And if you look at the grant dollars that we're using, those grant dollars are supporting the initiatives that our teachers and our students and our parents are most excited about, and it provides us with our student services. So we're able to do those things because we have had an opportunity to get additional funding. But I would recommend that you reach out as a town council to have RIDE come in and do that data dive with you, so you can ask your specific questions and you can get really into what you're specifically interested in and then build from there.
Craig.
Sharon, thank you very much. Scott, you said this is not about politics. I hate to say it, it's all about politics. And you also said back when MGT, which did it in 1999, you said they recommended that we have an equalized tax rate. Now, looking at the grand list back then, Charlestown would have paid approximately 60% of the budget. Now, right now, we have a student population of about 24 to 25%. Is that fair? Is that fair to Charlestown? I don't think so. Then, in May, middle of May 2007, the school committee, and you'd recognize some of these names. I mean, I loved seeing it because Abbott, Cicchetti, Day, Ease, Faulkner, McQuaid, Petit, Pruse, Sarah. I remember those names. They discussed doing it again. And Mr. Pulowski, in his usually infinite wisdom and his very loud, booming voice, was hollering, no way. And the reason why, we didn't do anything they recommended the first time. I don't want to spend, back then, $100,000 wasting it for not doing it. Shades of what Gina said. Then when Ryan Callahan was chair, we had as an agenda item, and it only lasted about 8 minutes. Mr. Ritchie was the superintendent then. We discussed doing it then. And Barry alluded possibly up to $200,000 to do a study. Why so expensive? Because you're also paying to house these people, to fly them in, whatever amount of time they do their analysis. Several years back, Charleston Town Council called the school committee members from Charlestown to a town council meeting. And they wanted to know why, with an increase of 5 students, our contribution went up $550,000, $110,000 per student. Why did that happen? And all the members said, because Richmond went down 37. That impacts us every year. Charlestown at 24%, Hopkinton almost 40. You were warned years ago your student population was going to rise. Frank was your chair. The demographic study says Charleston's going to drop, Richmond's going to stay a little neutral, and then Hopkinton's going to rise. And it has done exactly what they said. Now, what it's going to do 3 years from now, I don't know. All right, but that demographic study was done by a company during the Factory in the Field episode, which wasn't that long ago. So personally, I'm not for this. All right, because what are they going to truly tell us? The first thing, the big ticket items, what people have learned on this school committee is A, there's no sense making a cut of $500 out of a $65 million budget. You need big ticket items. So what's that? One is a school. Okay, right now we have 1,115 elementary students. That's before maybe some more kids sign up this September or August or up to October 1st, right? But the point is, that's what we have. 3 schools, by state law, by their regulations of how many students they're allowed to house, 3 schools, not including Hope Valley, can house 1,233 with a difference of 118 students. Now, if we go through a big boom of population rising, I guess we'd have to address that issue if we go beyond that. I personally don't see it happening, but as far as a management study, personally, I'm not for it. So, that's my opinion.
So we've had a robust conversation. So Tyler, you haven't spoken yet. And then everybody else who's already spoken, you've got one more bite at the apple. So I'm going to go to Tyler and then Catherine.
So I mean, I have a couple questions. I've never really understood what people were looking for in a management study, to be 100% honest with you. I do think Gina alluded to it at some point, and what I think Councilor Hurst and people are looking at is they think that we're bloated at the top, if that makes sense, right? And we're looking for efficiencies there. And quite honestly, you go through this, and I have to agree with Craig and a few other people here. I just don't think you're going to find that, and people aren't going to like the outcome of what they see and what they read. Secondly, we're talking about finding a credentialed outsider to do this. We can't even find a damn study to reference. How do we find someone who's really credentialed to do this? What are those credentials to do this? I mean, you're looking for an audit, you're looking for a CPA. You're looking for an investment guy, you go to a CFA, or you go to a certified financial planner. I mean, I understand there's certified management accountants out there, but I just don't understand the thought process behind what the credential for this is. I just don't. Right now, I don't support this. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Catherine.
Yes, I just want to follow up on your comment, Gina, that the first obligation of the school committee members is to the students. We hear that constantly. I know as a brand new school committee member, that was the first thing that we were told. Secondly, you said that the town council is responsible for the taxes. But because 80% approximately of the budget, at least in Richmond and Hopkinton, is outside of the town council control, no one is available to look out for 80% of the budget unless school committee members are responsible enough to recognize that while they can never lose sight of their supreme obligation to the students getting a good education, they also must not dismiss their obligation to look out and balance the financial needs of the people that are funding the schools as well. And so that is why I believe that the school committee members have to do both. And I understand that this has opened up a lot of questions that I don't think we all have satisfactory answers to. And I would be dishonest if I pretended that I understand the whole scope of this. In principle, I absolutely agree that there is an advantage to having an external agency do that. And I would see no harm in, Sharon, I know you mentioned that you knew of 3 vendors in the state. I would see no harm in inviting a vendor to come that has more experience in it. And again, I'll just reiterate just one point, that big companies do this kind of thing all the time, and they are not insinuating that the people that they hire, like you said, Gina, you have hired us to do these kind of things. Big companies do this kind of thing, and they're not insinuating the people that they have hired are incompetent or not doing a good job. So my opinion is that we should at least entertain a vendor or two to just give a presentation to the school committee.
So that's against the state law. So you cannot call in a vendor to discuss a quote that you want them to give you, because you have to put it out to everybody. So
Okay.
that's not, that's part of the purchasing law.
Okay.
I just want to clarify. you do have a responsibility for the budget. That's why we take it very seriously. We sit here at this table and the budget cuts, how many members of Hopkinton and Richmond, and I'm doing this, I don't want you to answer, but that's where it comes down to the table. And I think what we saw, Catherine, is that the difficult decisions to cut the budget are our school and our staff, and it's going to impact our students. So when Tyler said, people think we're bloated at the top, please feel free to watch us work. Because I do think that people will not be happy when they say that we're inefficient because you have a little number of people doing a lot of things. And I think, I just want to be clear, overall, the time and effort into the budget is where you're representing your towns for fiscal responsibility. Where you're not tax based, that's a town's responsibility. And if that's what people want to do, then that's great, but that's a town council responsibility. First and foremost, the reason why it's legislated and the reason why school committees were created were because bottom lines were never good for students. They're not widgets, they're not factory materials. They're real people with real lives and real situations that occur. And we have to look at it differently than a police car or a fire truck. It's different, and it's important, but it's different. So all I'm saying is that if we're looking to change tax base, then I would push on your town councils for economic development, and I would push on all of you during budget workshop to find those efficiencies, because that's where that work happens. And to be honest, I think we all saw with the budget committee, subcommittee that worked very diligently, that it's really hard. The decisions that you have to make are cutting teachers, closing schools. That's where your money is going to be. And that's not, we all saw the outcry about Hope Valley. That's not going to change. And if we have to completely close it, that's not going to be a fun conversation for any of us. We all get the emails, we all get the letters, we all see the social media. That's where the efficiencies are going to come. But my recommendation for a slow rollout is because I have to keep in interest the best for students. And yes, was it hard to close kindergarten? Absolutely. But I had to look at 30 compared to 3,000. So while those decisions are hard, that's my responsibility. Like I said, but that's all I want to say is that first and foremost, my responsibility is to advocate for the majority of what's best for all students. Parents should advocate what's best for their child. But in essence, I think we all know the realist vision is Hope Valley has to close. And that means if we can do it thoughtfully, we won't lose or have to lay off staff because we have enough retirements coming up through attrition that we can do this. And that's what we've been doing. That's why you don't see a bloated budget. But then we all know contracts are coming up. Our teachers work hard. We saw the budget that we're presenting every year is way below inflation. That's not easy to do. So I don't take it as you thinking or anyone's thinking that we're incompetent. I have a hard time dishing out money when I'm getting grants to support student services. That's why I'm not for it. And I don't think, based on what we reviewed for history, previously things were acted upon, and I'm not in any interest of doing things that are not going to help improve the work that we do.
So we've had a robust conversation about this. Is there any other school committee who would like one more bite at the proverbial apple? Final comment? Catherine, I'm going to wait.
One more question, that's all.
Yep, anybody else? Okay, good.
Like Gina just mentioned, this past budget season, it took Charlestown to make the cuts. Charlestown.
It's a management study, though. Focus on that.
I understand that. Okay, but we also have to make the decisions. Our superintendent just alluded to this. So.
Thank you. Donna, your final comment?
Yeah, final comment. I think I want to repeat what Jessica pointed out. When we went out to bond, the taxpayers in 2 of the towns voted it down. And that was, to me, one of the most efficient money saving over the long term things that we could do as a committee, is to take advantage of the state money to build schools rather than be looking constantly to repair them. The fact that the voters voted that down said to me they're not looking at the most efficient way of operating this district. So I think that's a point to be made.
So I respect, and with a little further thought, I can certainly understand why it could it would be illegal to pick a specific vendor to make a presentation because you're not having an RFP, you're not putting it out to anyone. So yeah, if you think about it a little more, it makes logical sense that that would not be allowed. But the idea of how to get more information and explore it, for a lack of thinking of another way, I threw that out there, but I feel like if we had more information, again, big companies do this kind of thing all the time, and it's not a negative against our present administration. So that's my final comment.
Thank you. Jessica?
So you say big companies do it all the time. I don't see it done of public schools. I'm open to putting out an RFP to see who's out there. You know, Sharon says she knows people, but that's not the professional way we have to do things. But I'd be curious to know, who are the people doing this? Are they credentialed? What's the experience?
Doing what?
Not because,
That's my point.
right, exactly.
Right.
Like,
This is just to jump
there's
in.
not enough information.
Right. My concern is we can have an idea, but it's not going to scratch the itch of everybody.
Right?
Sharon, you can.
When I asked the governor if he had any money, and could he do a study, pay for a study, he said, what kind of study? So that's when I went out and found Prince George's County's RFP, and I sent that RFP to 3 vendors to show what I was looking for, what I thought a management study was, and to try to get a quote so that I know what to ask for, how much money to ask for from the governor. So these people, the 3 people that I'm talking about, have seen the Prince George's County's RFP. So that, and supposedly they can do it.
I just want to be
For
clear.
that kind of
Remember,
money. I
Prince
just
George
wanted
was
you to know.
based on audit findings. So they probably looked at, like I did.
No,
looked
they
at it.
didn't. Actually, I only found the audit findings through the Langworthy Library this
But it
past
says
Friday.
it in the RFP. The
Well, it
RFP
said what we were looking for, yeah.
Right, it references the findings that they wanted, so that's what I'm saying, they reference it.
Yeah.
But what they were looking for.
Correct.
We don't have findings or recommendations, so we're basing it off hunch. Because if we had findings and recommendations from the audit, then it would make sense, we would build an RFP around what we're looking to improve upon.
But that's the other reason why I gave you the final report, because I thought if you read the kind of recommendations they came up with, that might trigger your mind thinking, oh, well, maybe what are we doing in this area? Could we do it differently? Could it?
I told you, we need
Yeah.
more people, and people are gonna say no.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that. You don't know. You don't know. But-
Appreciate it.
But
So-
they didn't
Thank you,
just.
Sharon. No, I appreciate all the work you put into
Yeah,
it.
I found 3 people who said they could quote, but I just wanted to let you know that they did see the RFP from
Yeah.
Prince George's.
Thank you. So I think we've had a robust conversation about this. I don't see any action on the floor, so I appreciate everybody's discussion. I appreciate everybody being respectful, and we're gonna move on. Thank you.
So item G is the individual school committee member request for conference fee reimbursement. So this was put on the agenda, and Catherine and I spoke because the rules of conduct, section 3, item E, has any expenditure exceeding $75 will require prior approval of the school committee. So that was probably, what was that? That was updated back in, I want to say 2015. So of course, costs have risen, and it's now $100. So we have a couple of things we could do. We can update that to say $100, or we have to put in some method of knowing, because we don't have this in the budget. So it's not a problem if you go, but if you want it in the budget, then we need the school committee to take action of the budget to have the money in there to be able to pay. So it does say the chair would have to approve it based on the, it just says individual school committee members' requests for reimbursement for mileage, conference fees, etc., shall be directed to the chair. Any expenditure exceeding $75 will require prior approval of the school committee. So Catherine, based on the invoice that you see, she had authorized us to be able to pay it because you have the bills anyway. But we felt like we should clarify, is it the committee's will to add this conference fee to the budget and or to update the number to the $100 fee that's been happening? So we just wanted to make sure that we were all clear on the process.
Right, Craig?
So I was on the committee when we did this, because some people go into like $300-400 conferences, and the school committee look at the budget, say, you know, we weren't prepared for this. But with that being said, are we just trying to clean this up, or is somebody requesting this?
So nobody has come to the chair to request going to a conference. People have gone to conferences, and typically what we say to RIASC is the school, please bill Chair Ho.
Okay.
The bills have come in, and they're over $75. So
RIASC is charging more than 75.
they're charging $100. So
Per person.
right. So this has happened to a couple of members here.
Oh.
I don't think the members knew that it was going to be over this limit, because I'm sure they would say, hey, can we go? And we would have had a discussion. So I think we need to either amend that to raise it from $75 to $100, or we have to say to everybody as a collective, if it's over $75, you may have to pay $25 of that cost, or we need to put a line item in the budget. Pat?
I have a question.
Sure.
Are they requesting, I mean, you're saying they're going to these conferences and then submitting a bill for reimbursement?
So I don't know that the people understood that it was going to be over the $75.
I don't think it was clear. That the bill that we were getting.
Did they even know before they got reimbursed, that they had to get your permission?
I think that's a misunderstanding in the
Right, we got, like we said, we got
bylaws.
over the rules of conduct, but that was the concern, like, people probably didn't realize that they needed the chair approval.
Right.
Okay, because I didn't know if these were seasoned people or new
No.
people or.
Not seasoned people. Karen, did you have a comment?
This is me. So
Well, it's not just you.
it's not just me. So I went to the RIAS, but I've gone for 3 years, and this is the first time this has come up.
Right.
So
So,
like, it came up before, but I think we figured out, okay, this keeps happening, we need to figure out a
Right, and I
plan.
have no problem reimbursing the district for this. Like, it's informative. It's a way for me to meet my hours. It's
So it, like, originally, like, there were some school committee members, when they first got on, they went, which was, it's not a problem, it's just that if we want to do it, we just have to know, and we have to budget for it, and then we have to plan for it. So we wanted to make sure, A, that it's now going to be at least $100, so we want to make sure we update this. And B, my recommendation is this, that we know so that we can have a plan for the budget. So if, like, the typical RIAS is like a May conference and a January conference. Those are the typical ones, because it's like school committee 101, and then they do like an update one. And they both run for the same cost. My suggestion would be that, you know, if, like, we may have new members who come on and want to go to school committee 101. So, but we just want to plan for it so that we know, and that we can be mindful of it.
Holly?
I was just gonna make a motion to update it to $100 and make it amend it to $100. In terms of the rule of conduct, item 3, number 8.
I think she can.
I'll second that if she raises it to 125.
Raise it to 125.
Just in case, sorry.
I'm fine.
Well, yeah.
No, I agree, because we don't know.
It's a valid argument.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not only gonna get reimbursed what you spent.
I'll amend that to 125, give a
Second.
little cushion just in case for
Second.
inflation.
I am in full agreement with that, because again, we don't get paid, we don't get a stipend for the work that we do.
And I think it's valuable. I do think
It is
that
very
it's valuable
valuable.
to go.
I do think it's valuable as well.
We just want to make sure that we clean up the process so that no one's like, what do you mean? I didn't know I could even go. So there are some taking the opportunity, some that may not want to, but I think it's, you are required by law to have 6 hours of professional development every year. By going to one of those, you'll meet that requirement, so it's helpful. You also have backup, because now, you know, you get the bill that says you went. So that's helpful too.
Subcommittees count too. Sorry.
They do.
Certain subcommittees, not all subcommittees.
There are questions on the motion? All right, those in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next steps as they relate to elementary school planning and the phase out of Hope Valley Elementary School. So as I had mentioned to you before, this item is included on each agenda moving forward so that we can determine the further action that needs to be taken as it relates to Hope Valley Elementary as we prepare for the FY26 budget season. So again, my recommendation for the budget would be, right now, is to keep the slow rollout, and then we have K in 1, and then reevaluate for FY27 how fast we need to go, because that'll allow us, and I think I've told you, like, we know the numbers are getting smaller and smaller, so that allows us to be mindful of the plan. But if school committee has different direction, so for example, my charge, no longer Ned's charge, but whoever's in the seat, would be, superintendent, if the budget is even 0.01% over, I want you to dig deeper into Hope Valley. So those are the kinds of things that we would need to know so that we can plan mindfully around the budget. I think all of you saw at the budget workshop, that's where the money's gonna come from. It's gonna be staffing and closure of the building. Can't just, well, you can completely close it. I would recommend that you don't completely close it all at once, because I think it provides a disruption that we're not prepared for thoughtfully. Can we do it? Sure. Will it be thoughtful? No, because you have preschool students, you have to have certain things done, so you're gonna be working inefficiently to be able to house your preschool program, et cetera. So our thought is, in August, we start up the necessity for school construction team. We think through the recommendations that we've heard from other community members, including school committee members, about what kind of things people want to pursue for options, so that when we do an RFP, the people who are bidding on the RFP know exactly what you want and how much that's going to cost, because every schematic costs more money. So we want to be mindful of what it is, because we've heard, oh, well, we just want a renovation plan. That's not easily just done, because what is your renovation plan? Is it more classrooms? Is it an additional auditorium? Is it an upgrade of an auditorium? Is it an upgrade of cafeteria? So things like that. So we'll begin in August. We did discuss starting those meetings at an elementary school. So our first meeting will be at Richmond. Therefore, that people that are there, we can have the conversation about specific issues like flooding. Although we have leaking at the middle school and we have it at Charlestown and other areas, we felt like we could have larger conversations in a facility where we can point out very specific items of concern. And then we're doing Charlestown next, so we can discuss the well water issues and the septic issues, et cetera, because these items are not going away. They still exist. We just have to have a plan for them. And as you know, in the budget will be the $2.3 million request for capital improvements to be able to begin the renovation planning. So, I think we were very honest with the taxpayers. We were very honest with the community about the cost of that work. But that's where we are to date. And now we have the members, so we'll be starting that without Ned.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, budget transfers. I recommend approval of the transfers by July 16th, 2024 on the additional sheet attached.
So moved. Second.
Questions on the budget transfer? Those in favor? It is unanimous.
All right, Ned, if you would so lovingly, one more time, provide the FY24 budget update as your finale request.
Yes, sure.
Oh, no, I'm gonna have plenty of requests before he leaves.
When is the official leave date?
End of the month,
Okay.
but I will be available to help out as needed.
For a
Slam
small
him,
fee.
Tyler.
Small fee.
Slam him.
Do you want me to just give a
Yes.
brief recap? So on the revenue side, you can see we came in slightly over budget at about $50,000 more than we anticipated. I don't know that we'll see too much more activity there. It depends on closing out our grants and closing out a few other things, so we may see some more. We also, on our expense side, it shows that we have over 2 million available. That, of course, does not include some of the summer pays and some other adjustments that happen at year end, so that number is going to shrink significantly as well. On the grant side, things are tracking to expectations. We've been keeping up with our spending plans. Things are coming together pretty well there. The lunch fund, we are seeing a little bit of weakness in collections. Debt was usually running around 20,000 a year. It's now climbed. We're thinking over 30, may even approach 40. So that's something we're gonna have to keep an eye on. This is consistent with what we shared earlier about the lunch prices. We'll be okay next year because we do have a healthy balance in that account, but I think next year that's gonna have to be something we examine. Student activities fund is just as per normal.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that needs to be pulled? Oh. Sure.
A question for Ned in this section. So on, in item 8J, there was, line items for the expense operating account status report through June 30th. And it was, line item number 321,
Are
building
you in the
up.
budget update? Are you in the consent agenda?
I am not in the consent agenda. It's
Okay.
8J.
Okay.
So, building upkeep, utilities and maintenance, there was, $691,000, from the available budget line item. So, I mean, I know that we had a atypical winter, so I'm assuming that, oil, would be in that utilities line, Ned. So, what's typically paid out of that line item that, you're seeing at $691,000 available budget there?
So 8J. Pull that back up.
I'm sorry, I didn't write down the page number when I printed it out, but I think. So it's the page where, it starts with 000 workers' compensation. And then it goes to report
Oh,
total.
okay. Yeah, I believe that would include utilities.
It says building upkeep, utilities and maintenance, 691,000
So
available
is it in
budget.
the consent?
No, I asked. You said
No,
No, Ned, it's
8J.
it's page 1 of the expense operating account
Yes.
status report.
That's right.
Trying to see which item it is in the packet documents here.
27.
Page 27, yeah.
Oh, so C business, yeah. Sorry.
321.
Yeah, are you online? Because I'm not online, so I don't have page 27. Oh, thanks.
Okay.
321.
Yes, so that would be in the different maintenance categories. So when we did a budget freeze, we just stuck with the necessary items. So utilities was one area that we had a lot of savings. That would have been in the oil side.
Okay.
In addition to a mild winter, we also predicted that we were going to have the continuing trend line with oil cost, and that
We also
did
moved
not
some
happen.
into ESSER, the electrical for this AC.
Yeah, that was some of that would have affected operations, and there was also some of that on the capital. Yeah,
Because we're trying to offset the healthcare
Okay.
concerns.
correct.
And then I'm assuming on, this is page 28, where it says, the available budget is 2.8 million. And you had said earlier that you still have summer payrolls left that is not reflected in that overage at the time. What else would you anticipate on top of the summer payrolls?
So on top of that, there'll be some benefits reconciliation. One of the major items will be the healthcare. So I anticipate there'll be a healthcare entry which will recognize that deficit we've been running. So that'll probably be in the $600,000 to $700,000 range.
The retirement stuff too, that's where you mean basic benefits.
Yeah, there'll be some retirement reconciliation too, but the big one is the healthcare.
Thank you.
Consent agenda, can I ask a question?
Sorry, just looking at that same page, 27, line 431, public, parochial, private, and charter school pass-through. Is that like a holding account? Or,
So that's the different tuitions.
right?
So if, for instance,
Oh, so
there.
does public mean like out of district?
Yeah,
Public?
correct.
Okay, I was just confused why that was included with parochial, private, but it's out of district.
Correct.
Okay.
And as a for instance there, we typically don't get DCYFs and a DCYF billing in a timely manner.
Right.
So that usually ends up being entered later after the fiscal year closes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Did anybody pull anything?
No.
You want to pull anything?
A.
Oh. You don't have to.
That was out loud.
A1 and 2, and 3?
Three,
All of
yeah,
A.
A.
pull.
Okay.
A, 1, 2, and 3, pull.
Yep. That's it.
Seeing there's none, Madam Chair, make a motion to approve the remainder.
Second.
Those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve A1 executive session minutes of June 18th, 2024, approval executive session minutes of May 14th, 2024, minutes not sealed.
So moved.
Need a second. Those in favor? And those abstaining.
I was not here.
What's that? Madam Chair, make a motion to approve A2 executive session minutes of June 18th, memorandum of agreement between the Charo Regional School District and NEA Charo pertaining to Article 12A, minutes unsealed June 18th, 2024.
So moved.
Those in favor? And those abstaining.
I was enjoying myself somewhere else.
Madam Chair, make a motion to approve A3 regular session minutes of June 18th, 2024.
So moved.
Those in favor? And abstaining. Oh, you're in favor? No, you're abstaining.
Abstain.
Thank you.
All right, it's 9:45.
You?
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, no, I have to, did you do the other one already?
We're done.
Yeah,
We're done.
We're done.
It's you.
Okay, subcommittee reports, none at this time. For my report, the district transportation. The deadline to register for the fall busing closed July 1st. We sent out email reminders and text messages to remind our families. It doesn't mean that they can't register. It just means that the time that we may need to be able to complete the request goes now from 3 to 4 weeks. Usually we can get them done in 3 to 5 days, but our policy is 3 to 4 weeks because, as you know, with even one bus down, our registrations usually go up. And the actual, on the website, if reviews that we also will, at the beginning of the school year, we can rescind transportation of no ridership. So for example, if you're consecutively not riding the bus for 10 days, then we put a letter to the family that says we're no longer going to provide you with bus transportation because you have not utilized the transportation. Sometimes we'll get a call that they're in a sports activity or an extracurricular, so that in the morning they're getting dropped off. So we make a note of it when the sport activity ends, and then we tell them, because obviously, seats are a commodity, especially when we're being efficient. So K registrations, Ashway's at 44 K students, Charleston's at 53, Richmond's at 80, with the largest class size being at Ashway at 21 and 22. And then our summer advance,
Can you repeat Ashway, please?
Sure. 21 and 22. Oh, it's well, actually, we just removed one. That's why I took it off. But it was 44. But we're moving. Family has asked to go to Charlestown.
Okay.
The summer advance is an integral part of our continuous improvement efforts, aligned with our district vision. It is dedicated a 4-day professional development event where our administrators come together to engage in collaborative work on a variety of critical topics. The focus of our days is to ensure that our efforts and initiatives are directly aligned with the vision, hereby fostering a cohesive and strategic approach to achieving our educational goals. Our administrators will participate in training, discussions, and planning sessions on key areas such as multi-tiered systems of support, student engagement strategies, data-driven decision-making, and leadership development. This time is designed to provide our administrative team with the tools, knowledge, and shared understanding necessary to lead our schools effectively and support our teachers and students in reaching their full potential. The outcomes of the summer advance contribute to the continued success and advancement of our district. Next is our U.S. Green Ribbon Award. I am pleased to share that we have recently returned from Washington, D.C., where we were honored to receive the U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon School Sustainability Award. Again, the only district in Rhode Island ever to receive the district award. This prestigious recognition underscores our commitment to sustainable practices, student and staff health and wellness, and environmental education within our district. During our time in DC, we not only celebrated the achievement, but participated in numerous sessions and workshops focused on advancing our efforts in this cause. These sessions provided valuable insights and practical strategies that will further enhance our initiatives in creating a healthier, more sustainable learning environment for our students.
Did you take pictures?
We did. I'll send you some.
Oh, good.
It'll be in the update for August. That's it for me. And we have no work, no school, August.
Okay.
Well,
School committee requests for future agenda items or legal opinions. Anybody have any? Nothing for Yes.
I'd like to request a data portal presentation from RIDE. I can send you.
Good idea. Right. Anybody else? Craig?
No, before I make a motion to adjourn, I just want to comment about the awards you went to. It just seems like, considering what we accomplished, we would have got a little more ink than what we got. Just mention it. So, Madam Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?